A group of fighters engages in a fierce battle with monsters in a high-difficulty dungeon. Suddenly, a new powerful monster appears, putting enormous pressure on the heroes. This is the master of the high-difficulty dungeon, the wingless dragon Sebarumus, located on level 67. The group of heroes is in disarray. They realize that they have no chance of dealing with the dragon. The dragon, spewing all-consuming flame, rushes at the group. The team leader is about to use his main defensive skill, but he is not sure he can stop Sebarumus's attack. But something strange happens. A new character appears on the battlefield and draws the dragon's attention. A goblin, who appeared out of nowhere, stood between the team of fighters and the dragon. The fighters are glad for the break, but they can't figure out what this goblin, who looks rather comical compared to the dragon, is doing here. This green runt, letting out a wild cry, rushes at Sebarumus. There are sounds of a fierce battle. The goblin strikes the dragon and the squad of fighters is in shock. They can't believe their eyes. The goblin literally crushed the dragon with one blow. He killed Sebarumus with one attack. The defeated dragon lies before the eyes of the astonished fighters, who cannot understand why one monster attacked another. Suddenly, one of them saw a figure standing on the hill. This is a guy with a cheeky grin. The fighters finally realized that it was this guy who summoned the goblin who saved them from the dragon. Kim Chul-seo works at a construction site. His colleagues noticed that he was smiling strangely today. Did something good happen to him? But Kim himself carries heavy weight while being depressed. He considers himself a goblin and a weakling. His destiny is a low-level dungeon from which he will never escape. Of course, there are cases when someone manages to suddenly get rich by winning the lottery. But a goblin will always remain a goblin, no matter how much experience he has gained. Workers at a construction site are talking about their former colleague, Mr. Cha, who received a hidden class in the game Heaven's Gate and therefore no longer needs to go to work. The virtual reality game. Heaven's Gate has gained immense popularity among people because it allows them to forget about real reality. The hardware required to access the game is incredibly expensive, but thanks to the widespread availability of internet cafes, anyone can now play. The enormous popularity of Heaven's Gate can be explained by the fact that huge amounts of money began to flow into it. In-game items that can be obtained in the game have become real currency. At first, Kim Chul-seo enjoyed playing Heaven's Gate, but it so happened that he got the ultimate attack stone skill, which allows him to mine ore. But this is an insanely stupid skill. He grinded like crazy in real life, and now he has to do it in the game. Kim dreamed of meeting a beautiful girl in the game, a teammate, and marrying her. But now he has to stupidly mine this damned ore. But one day, Kim Chul-seo got lucky and managed to find a superior healing crystal in a quarry. This stone can be sold for 300,000 won. While Kim was rejoicing at his luck, a figure appeared next to him. It was an insanely beautiful girl with other team members. They asked if his ore mining skill was high enough. The thing is that their team was going through a dungeon, but their path was blocked by a huge rock. The girl said that they didn't have anyone on their team who knew anything about mining, and asked Kim to help them. Since his level is too low to survive in the dungeon, the team members promised to protect him and deal with the monsters themselves. After considering the offer, Kim decided to accept. He would be able to gain a lot of experience in the dungeon, and perhaps even obtain a high-level ore that could be sold profitably. However, he is confused by the dangers of the dungeon, which contains powerful monsters. Seeing his doubts, the beautiful girl took his hand and said that her ideal was a guy with strong arms who knew how to mine ore. Kim's heart sank, and he finally made up his mind and accepted the team's offer. The level of monsters in the dungeon is quite low, but even they were much stronger than Kim. One of them pounced on him and Kim froze, expecting the inevitable blow and death. Suddenly, a powerful flash of light erupted. It was the Salamander Flame skill. The beautiful girl Catherine Lee, who turned out to be a level 31 mage, dealt with the monster with one blow and asked Kim if he was okay. Kim was shocked. The girl turned out to be incredibly strong. She single-handedly dealt with the entire pack of wolves in an instant. Catherine asked him to be careful and asked him to never leave her. Kim was enchanted. Could this really be the romantic encounter he had been dreaming about? The other team members turned out to be no weaker than the girl. One of them demonstrated a spectacular skill, Huge Wheel. He told Kim that there was ore in the dungeon that could be mined with a high mining skill. But since none of them want to learn the dirty skills, they needed help from someone like Kim. Kim was very offended by these words. Why was he talking to him like he was an idiot? He was very upset that those around him thought he had no fighting skills at all and decided to demonstrate them. However, it turned out that he really didn't have them. Meanwhile, the team members discuss whether the information they acquired about valuable treasures being hidden behind the rock is true. After all, if this is not the case, they will face huge losses. Kim continues to mine ore, complaining that he is forced to risk his life for pocket money. He strikes blow after blow, driving away the sad thoughts. Suddenly, with his final blow, he manages to break the rock. The team of fighters froze. What did they manage to dig up in the end? A massive door appeared in front of Kim and the team of fighters. Have we really found a hidden dungeon? Kim is delighted by the discovery and the fact that he will finally be able to turn his life around as Mr. Cha, but he receives a fatal blow from behind and falls. He can't breathe anymore, he's dying. A team of fighters managed to find a hidden dungeon in a low-level zone, and all they needed was a stupid mining skill. Kim finally realizes that the fighters knew about the entrance to the hidden dungeon in advance, but initially did not intend to share the loot with him. Kim Chulso woke up and wondered why he was still alive. It turns out that the superior healing crystal worked. He survived, but lost 300,000 won. Kim is terribly upset about losing his money. Getting up and looking around, he saw that the door to the hidden dungeon was open, meaning it had not yet been cleared. Having lost the healing crystal, Kim is not going to leave so easily. He is still determined to turn his life around. He will become the worst nightmare for these fighters who look down on him. Let them wait for me in the hidden dungeon. Kim rushes forward furiously through the open door, but something seems to be going wrong. It turns out that a staircase starts right behind the door. Did I really end up in a hidden dungeon? It appears to be a hidden goblin sanctuary with a huge goblin sitting on the throne. But really, goblins are all there is in the hidden dungeon. It shouldn't be like this. Kim Chulso continues his search. Suddenly, he discovers someone's body under his feet. It turns out that this is a dwarf from the team of fighters who used Kim and then tried to get rid of him. The dwarf is holding on with all his might. He doesn't press the revive button because he's afraid of missing the hidden dungeon. He's too greedy. A service message appears in front of Kim demanding that he leave the dungeon. She hears someone's eerie screams. He sees a huge hand clutching the strongest member of the fighting team. At the monster's foot lies that beautiful girl, Catherine Lee. This is Geiger, a terrifying level 80 monster. Level 80 is not something even the strongest team members can handle. Everything is developing according to the worst-case scenario. In Heaven's Gate, the sense of touch is perfectly implemented, and hits from monsters of the same level as the player do not cause severe pain. But if the monster's level is significantly higher, everything is different. Seeing Catherine lying under the monster's foot cries out for help. But what can he do against this creature with his low level? Moreover, the pain received from blows from a monster significantly superior in level, due to the impact on the brain, can lead to serious consequences and even death. After thinking about the situation, Kim decides that she cannot allow this monster to destroy herself. Moreover, the members of this team were the first to betray and abandon him. He is too weak to fight such a monster. Therefore, in such a situation, he must survive alone. Kim saw a rather strange message that the Goblin Lord felt a kinship with his cowardice and weakness. Does the Goblin mean to say that he is weak and cowardly? Do I really want to be like this? If I had even a drop of strength, would I run away? Kim always wanted to have a normal job so that people wouldn't look down on him. He wanted to fight the monsters fairly. Kim's unknown parents left him with a huge debt, which prevented him from living a normal life. But he himself did nothing wrong. Why is this goblin looking down on him? In response, the Goblin Lord only laughed creepily. A message appeared that Kim became an honorary goblin and now all goblins will help him. He can also switch to a hidden class, Goblin Summoner. Kim perceives this as a mockery and wants to refuse such an offer. But the level 80 Geiger is getting closer and closer, ready to pounce. Kim understands that he has no way out, he won't be able to escape, so he agrees to transfer to the hidden class. He uses a new skill and summons a goblin. The goblin that appears looks rather weak and puny. Kim doesn't believe that such a goblin can handle the monster, but decides to use him as bait. With a wave of his hand, he orders the goblin to destroy the monster. The goblin bravely charges at Geiger. Kim decides to take advantage of the short delay to escape. However, here the goblin deals a powerful blow to the monster. Kim is shocked. A level 80 Geiger was defeated with one hit, and he gained a ton of experience, as well as new skills Feed the Goblin and Walk the Goblin. There is also a message that the goblin's experience has been increased. It turns out that this weak-looking goblin is actually at maximum level. Meanwhile, members of the fighter team, destroyed by Geiger, begin to leave the game. Their death was terrible and painful. Catherine Lee was literally crushed under the monster's foot. She experienced unbearable pain and began to make terrible screams. The internet cafe staff rushed to her aid. but they can no longer help her in any way. Catherine will never be able to recover from the shock she experienced in the game. The goblin continues to clear the hidden dungeon. He gains experience from killing the remaining monsters and levels up. Meanwhile, Kim Chul-seo collects various treasures in the hidden dungeon. He found monster mana stones, wolf claws, and many other valuable items. There are so many of them that he can't even hold them in his hands. Despite the fact that all members of the team of fighters died, Kim managed to completely complete the hidden dungeon. All this is only thanks to the goblin, who completed the dungeon alone and did not boost even once. Kim is puzzled as to why such a puny goblin can actually be so strong. Even if it's a bug in the game, I have to get the most out of it before it gets fixed. After logging out of the game, Kim headed to the bank to sell the items he found in the hidden dungeon. He was offered 97,000 won for the items obtained from the monster. He also decided to sell the membrane and heart obtained from the level 80 Geiger. The bank employee's eyes widened when she heard the names of these items. She asked to wait a little and rushed to look for her boss. The attitude towards Kim suddenly changed. The bank manager, smiling flatteringly, personally poured him a cup of tea. Unfortunately, the tea turned out to be cold. Kim is confused why the manager invited him, since he just wanted to exchange items for money. But the manager started talking about how keeping money in a checking account would be wasteful and suggested investing it. What does this have to do with investments, since I don't have more than $1 million in my current account? However, the manager suddenly announced that the cost of the heart and Geiger membrane was 230 million won. Kim was surprised to realize that he had suddenly become a wealthy man. Returning to the game, the first thing he saw was a goblin, and at first he was happy. After all, thanks to him, he was able to pay off 10% of the huge debt. Suddenly, the goblin began to seem not at all ugly to him, but even a little cute. However, it was a little disconcerting that he managed to roll back the goblin's summon, and it continued to follow him around the city. Kim and the goblin attracted the attention of the city's residents. "Look how ugly he is," they shouted. The goblin paid no attention to their cries, but they really irritated Kim. A stern-looking warrior appeared and asked why this damn goblin was walking the streets of this city. Judging by the shouts of the townspeople, it was Patton Annihilator from the Everton Guild. Kim thought that things were bad. A person who took the name Annihilator could hardly be sane. He tried to stop him, shouting that the goblin was not a monster. But it was too late. Patton launched his most powerful attack on him. The goblin waved it off reluctantly, and the great fighter Patton the Annihilator died from a careless swing of a goblin. A goblin killed a man. The frightened townspeople began to make noise. If they find out this is my summoned monster, I'm done for, Kim thought. It's a shame that Patton the Annihilator was killed by a goblin, said guild member Everton Yoonhyuk of the Darkness, a level 30 assassin. He was supported by other guild members, Suji the Strongman, Ji-hyun the Harbinger of Death, and Min-sung the Speedwalker, who stated that the goblin should answer for the death of their comrade. Something needs to be done, because if the goblin kills them all, serious problems could arise. Kim tried to calm the guild members down by saying that he would take care of the goblin, as it would look terrible if they all got into a fight with him. But all persuasion was in vain, and the goblin suddenly used the skill Stone Throw. And Min-sung Skorakot died. The rest of the guild members pounced on Kim and the goblin, and they began to flee. In the alley they were running through, a door opened and a man looked out and called to them. Have they really found a safe haven and will be able to escape? But no. The man who called them turned out to be Sungryul the Cunning and suddenly attacked them. Another message appeared in front of Kim. The Goblin Lord is stunned by your meanness in attacking the enemies, causing them to lower their guard. For this he received 1 goblin point. Why did you first call me weak and cowardly, and now also vile? I didn't do anything wrong. What makes me cowardly, weak, and even mean? They themselves took me into their group and then betrayed me and stabbed me in the back. Look, Goblin, we've had enough of everyone looking down on us. It's time to put an end to it. So we'll just go ahead and destroy the Everton Guild. Meanwhile, the guild members continued their pursuit. Yoonhyuk of the Darkness. Why are you coming with us when I alone would be enough to destroy such a person? Asked Ji-hyun, the Harbinger of Death. You have to be careful. Patton the Annihilator, though the weakest of us, was killed by a goblin with 1 blow. The pursuing group heard someone's pitiful cries. It turned out that it was the defeated Sungryul the Insidious. Yoonhyuk saw the goblin that killed Sungryul. He swung and delivered his most powerful blow to the goblin. But it was all to no avail. The goblin took 0 damage. So it wasn't just my imagination before. This goblin really is weird, thought Yoonhyuk from Darkness. The goblin struck back and Yoonhyuk prepared to die, knowing he couldn't withstand it. However, something parried the green creature's powerful blow. It was Death Harbinger Ji-hyun who intervened just in time. "Would you really let some goblin kill you?" she asked. "How can such a low-ranking monster deal 1,000,000 damage? They must be using some kind of trick. Is someone trying to play a joke on me?" Yoon-hyuk used the skill Extreme Evil, which reduces speed, but makes all hits critical. "Why are you using such a skill to fight a goblin?" Death Harbinger Ji-hyun asked. "This will allow us to finish off the goblin with one blow and then move on to another." "Okay, then let's finish this quickly. I don't want anyone to see me using my most powerful skills against some goblin." Ji-hyun will use the combo skill Gale's Arrows. This skill removes all debuffs from the assassin. Yoon-hyuk now has all attacks deal critical hits. Attack damage increased by 30%, all speed debuffs removed, and critical damage increased by 20%. Now the goblin will definitely be destroyed. And again, 0 damage. Yoon-hyuk can't believe his eyes. The goblin is completely unharmed and grins insolently. Ji-hyun can't believe his eyes when he sees Yoon-hyuk defeated. Who finished off whom with one blow? What just happened? Is this not a normal monster? Was all Ji-hyun could stammer. "Yes, this is my monster and I summoned it," Kim said proudly. "How can a goblin be so strong? He defeated Yoon-hyuk, who is one of the strongest members of the Evaton Guild," Ji-hyun asked. "It doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm incredibly angry. What do you want from us? What have we done to you? Don't you understand it yourself?" Kim said with a dirty grin. "Don't come near me, you fucking pervert," Ji-hyun screamed, terrified by the insane look of Kim approaching. "I just wanted to say that you were the ones who attacked us first." At Ji-hyun's shouts, a crowd of people began to gather below. They looked up to see Kim with the goblin. Kim realized that it was time to get out of here, and he gave the command to the goblin to shut the screaming girl's mouth and leave. The goblin obediently followed his order and tried to cover Ji-hyun's mouth with his paw. However, the crowd took it differently. "The goblin has destroyed the Evaton Guild and now wants to rape the surviving woman," the people below shouted. "It looks like I'm finished. I just wanted to take revenge on the Evaton Guild for the attack, but it looks like I've gotten into a pretty tough spot." "Goblin, let go of this woman and let's go quickly," Kim shouted. He told the goblin to let the girl go. A man in a rookie suit is facing a monster that even the Evaton Guild couldn't handle, the crowd murmured. Ji-hyun cried bitterly. Kim thought that this was definitely the end for him and said loudly, "It's all over." He said it was all over for the goblin. The crowd cheered. "We don't know who you are, but we wish you luck. We're rooting for you. Crush him, brother." Chulso didn't understand why the crowd was supporting him so enthusiastically. Then it began to dawn on him. They don't know that it was I who summoned the goblin. At first I told them that I didn't want the Evaton Guild to suffer. Then he demanded that the goblin let the woman go. It turns out that in the eyes of these people, he is a hero, risking his life to save a girl from an evil goblin. "Hey, if you don't want to die a horrible death, promise you won't tell anyone about me and the goblin," he said to Ji-hyun. The girl had not yet recovered from the horror and therefore obediently promised to remain silent. "Damned monster! How dare you invade the village and cause suffering to the people?" Chulso addressed the goblin menacingly. "You just can't imagine what I'll do to you." Chulso remembered the skill he had acquired, Walk the Goblin, and used it. At the same time, he continued to shout loudly that he would never forgive the goblin. People watched in amazement as Chulso dragged the goblin along on a chain. "This is an advanced skill of the light chain. It's incredible that a newbie can use it," whispered the crowd. It was actually a fairly simple skill that allowed you to walk a goblin, whose mood improved as a result of the walk. Watching Chulso drag the goblin on a chain, Ji-hyun stated that it was probably at least level 50. Hearing this, the people in the crowd realized that it wasn't the Evaton Guild that was weak. It was the goblin and Chulso who were simply incredibly strong. "I can't kill the goblin, but I can drive him away," Chulso shouted. Meanwhile, he secretly used the skill Feed the Goblin. A juicy sausage appeared in his hand, which he immediately threw outside the city gates. The goblin immediately rushed for the sausage. "Get ready to close the city gates," Chulso shouted loudly to the city guard. The hungry goblin ran out of the gate following the sausage. The city gates immediately closed behind him. The city was saved. The city's residents were surprised to realize that the nightmare was finally over and they were saved. "He did it. He chased away the goblin," the crowd shouted joyfully. "It seems like everything ended well. I almost became known as a psychopath who destroyed an entire guild. But in the end, I became famous as the savior of the city," Chulso thought. "All the other guild members died and are now in the Sanctuary of Rebirth on Pascal's lands. Only I know about you and the goblin. But don't worry. I'll keep my promise and won't tell anyone about this," Ji-hyun suddenly said. "I know that in Pascal you have an infinite amount of CP, and that's why you're not afraid of monsters and other players. If you don't keep your promise and tell, I'll kill you. Wait for your revival in the rebirth sanctuary and kill you again and again. Chulso decided to properly intimidate the girl. His threats worked. Ji-hyun looked terribly frightened. She definitely wouldn't tell anyone about him and the goblin. Overall, the story ended quite well. The goblin was driven out, and the city was once again plunged into peace. After the incident in the city, Kim Chulso decided to rest and relax a bit. How nice it is to enjoy a nice hotel room for doing a good deed, he thought. He had time to calmly think over everything that had happened to him recently. I'm sorry that I couldn't save that girl Catherine Lee back then. If I had the strength, I would have definitely done it. Chulso was a little confused by the fact that he received a hidden class for feeling a kinship with goblins, and an extra goblin point for being considered vile. He decided to test his new skills. He saw the new skill rally and clicked on it. Then, out of nowhere, his goblin appeared. Damn, turns out that was a summoning skill. Quiet, bastard. If people find out you're here, we're finished, he hissed at the goblin. A club appeared in the goblin's hands, and Chulso quickly apologized for such rude treatment. Even though you did nothing, people mocked you and attacked you, you are just like me, he told the goblin. This world is full of all kinds of bastards. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. The revived members of the Everton Guild arrived along with Ji-hyun. So you're the bastard who saved the Everton Guild member yesterday? Patton asked. We made it clear to you yesterday that we are enemies. But nevertheless, you helped us, thank you. However, Ji-hyun continued to look at him rather warily, remembering that he had deceived them all. It's very simple. I helped you despite the fact that you tried to kill me because I need something from you, Chulso said. We thought so. But no matter the reason, the Everton Guild does not forget such things. We are indebted to you and therefore will help you no matter what. The thing is, I've been farming a lot in the newbie zone, but I haven't achieved anything yet. I've already reached level 30 and I want to move on to the next zone. Do you know how to do that? Chulso asked. You probably mean Fiorendel. We have someone who knows how to do it. Yoon-hyuk of Darkness will answer. It's me, a familiar voice was heard. Kim Chulseo turned around at the sound of the voice and saw Sung Ryul the Sneaky, the man who had vilely attacked him in the alley. I'm sorry for the past, Sung Ryul screamed as Chulso grabbed him. Since you took down the goblin all by yourself, you must be very strong, perhaps even stronger than all of us, Sung Ryul said. Sonril began to explain the structure of the newcomer's zone. It consists of 5 normal rooms, such as the grass zone where slugs spawn, dungeons in a mine in the mountains, dark forest zones, and other open-ended dungeons that can be accessed at any time. If you want to leave this place, you need to go through the raid dungeon. Unlike open dungeons, raid dungeons have gates that open after a certain time, and the number of attempts to pass through them is limited. We've gathered here specifically to clear a raid dungeon, said Yoon-hyuk of Darkness. Its opening day was yesterday, but everything fell through because of that damn goblin. It turns out I'm stuck here for a month, Chulso thought gloomily. I got over $200,000 in drops from a level 80 monster. My goblin is capable of clearing even stronger dungeons, but I'm forced to hang around for a month in a city where it's impossible to earn money. Chulso suffered. Are you kidding me? I can't hang around here for a month and waste my precious time. There has to be some other way, right? Chulso shouted. Yeah, everyone here is angry about wasting time, but there's nothing that can be done, Dark Yoon-hyuk replied. We told everything we knew about it, so our debt has been repaid, he added. We're going back, Yoon-hyuk said to his guild members. Ji-hyun looked at Chulso sadly, but couldn't add anything. She followed the others. The Everton Guild leaves the hotel with their heads down. The person watching this scene began to make strange sounds. He grinned slyly. The stars in the sky suddenly began to shine brightly. The system suddenly displayed a message about the opening of the boss raid. The fighters were shocked. At least 30 days would pass before the next raid. Raid boss, Dark Yoon-hyuk said thoughtfully. Kim Chulso was also surprised by this turn of events. He really opened up, Patton said. The guild members stood in front of the open portal and finally believed that the boss raid was open. There is no one in the raid right now, as everyone who was ready already cleared it yesterday and moved on to the next region. So this time, it'll be just us participating in the raid, Yoon-hyuk said. Kim Chulseo felt betrayed. You lied to me when you told me I would have to wait another month. You betrayed me to be first, he shouted. I'm an idiot if I trust people again after everything I've been through. You got it all wrong. We didn't lie to you. Ji-hyun tried to reassure him. So, are you coming with us or not? Yoon-hyuk asked. Then I'll quickly explain what awaits us in the raid. There's only one path to the boss, Riva. So you'll encounter him right after you enter, so be on your guard. The guild members decided that since his level was lower than theirs, he wasn't something to be afraid of. The entire Everton Guild is assembled, so we are ready to move forward. shouted Patton Annihilator. "This boss will only take us 10 seconds." Forward Everton, the guild members began to enter the portal. Kim Chulso ordered the goblin to remain here for now until he was summoned, as it would be unpleasant if the guild members found out that the goblin was related to him. "I won't let anyone betray me like they did last time. Just in case, I have another superior healing crystal." Having thought everything over, Chulso stepped into the portal after the guild members. The first thing I saw when I came out of the portal was a raid boss. It turned out to be a level 40 Iron Giant. They found themselves in the Iron Giant's hidden dungeon. "What's going on? Is this your doing, sneaky Sungryul? Kim Chulseo? Don't just stand there and run to the portal quickly," Ji-hyun shouted. "You want to escape from the hidden dungeon? Don't you know what rewards we can get here?" Chulso said. "But this boss is level 40. If we get hit, it won't just end with the death of the character. The consequences will be much more serious. However, you can run. I will take all the rewards for myself," said Chulso. He activated the summon of the Goblin Rally, but the goblin ignored the call and did not appear. Chulso found himself one-on-one with the Iron Giant. "Goblin, come out," he shouted, but it was too late. He was struck down with one blow. And this same moron was the same guy who heroically fought the goblin yesterday? Patton Annihilator was surprised, looking at the defeated Chulso. "We don't care what happens to that guy," Dark Yunhyuk said. "However, something strange is happening. The portals are already closed. It seems we underestimated this place. Apparently, this raid revealed a hidden dungeon. Guild members who encounter a hidden dungeon boss no longer have a choice. They must fight him." When Chulso woke up, he couldn't understand why he was killed with just one blow, since he had already reached level 31. "Damn, it turns out he forgot to distribute the stat points. No wonder he's so weak. The portal has closed, so I won't be able to summon the goblin anymore. I'll lose all my rewards because of that green bastard," Chulso thought. "Evident forward!" Yunhyuk sends his guild members to attack the monster. Ji-hyun uses the archer skill Tailwind Arrow. This skill increases the speed of all allies by 2 times. Dark Yunhyuk and Speedwalker Minson must attack first and find out the monster's weak points. With Death Harbinger's speed buff, this will be easy for assassins to do. The steel giant roars terribly, but does not have time to react to the attack. Dark Yunhyuk and Minson Skorikod each launch a 16-slash attack. Every monster has its own weak spot. 2 attacks of 16 slashes means 32 hits. The hit that deals the most damage will reveal the weak spot. However, the assassin's attacks passed without a trace. The monster received 0 damage, and it was not possible to identify a weak spot. This monster either has very high defense or... Yunhyuk of Darkness charged at the Iron Giant again. He used one of his strongest skills, unrivaled swordsmanship. Or maybe minor attacks don't work on him. That's right. As a result of Yunhyuk's powerful blow, the monster's HP dropped from 30,000 to 29,200 points. It turns out that the Iron Giant has a passive skill called Hatred of the Weak. All attacks that deal less than 5% of his maximum HP will be nullified. "Yunhyuk of the Darkness, it seems you are the only one of us who can deal significant damage to the monster," shouted Patton Annihilator. "No, he's not the only one with the strongest ultimate. We have someone else," Sungryul the Insidious replied. "Ji-hyun has the skill Death Harbinger Arrow, which uses her own health to draw the bowstring. If Ji-hyun is our trump card, then I will help buy her time," Patton said. He used the Battle Cry skill and rushed at the monster. With this skill, he provoked the Iron Giant and drew its attention to himself. What an idiot! Instead of running away, he attracted the monster's attack, thought Chulso, who couldn't move, but saw everything that was happening. Patton managed to parry the Iron Giant's attack. "Be more careful. For our plan to work, we cannot allow even a single mistake," Sungryul the Insidious shouted at him. To help Patton, Sungryul used the skill Pain Sharing, which distributed damage to another person, resulting in the fighter with more HP receiving more damage. They're all low-level fighters. They don't even have a hidden class. But why are they so damn strong? Chulso thought. Red-Eyed Minsu, Strongman Suji, Bloodthirsty Hunsu, Speedwalker Minson, and Darkness Yunhyuk are the assassin team that must destroy the monster's defenses. The entire team used the assassin's passive skill, Weakness Elimination, which reduces defense by 2%. Ji-hyun continues to prepare his deadly attack. "These guys from the guild are so strong they can kill the boss, but then I won't get experience and rewards," Chulso lamented. Suddenly, Patton noticed that the monster had stopped attacking him. He turned his attention to another player. "I can't stand to watch these losers fight, so I'll help them since I have the highest level." Kim Chulso activated the superior healing crystal. The main character appears late. Sensing that Chulso had been resurrected, the Iron Giant targeted him. He used a wide-range attack, which killed Minsu the Red-Eyed, Suji the Strongman, Hyunsu the Bloodthirsty, and Minsun the Speedwalker. "Why didn't you rise sooner, you bastard? My comrades died because of you," roared Patton Annihilator. To avenge them, he again rushed at the monster. "Don't let your guard down." Sungryul the Insidious tried unsuccessfully to restrain him. Patton Annihilator used the Iron Giant's Giga Slash skill, but he was defeated by the monster's counterattack. Due to the skill pain-sharing being activated, Sungryul the Bloodthirsty also died along with him. "Why? It's not my fault, I only revived myself," Chulso cried. The thing is that the monster first tries to kill the healer, the archer, but not the tank. Yoon-hyuk from Darkness began to explain. With his battle cry skill, Patton the Annihilator drew his attention to himself. But when you resurrected, it dropped the monster's aggression, and he hit us all with a wide attack. The assassins didn't even have time to react and were killed. "What should we do, Yoon-hyuk? Should I shoot now?" Death Harbinger Ji-hyun asked. "Keep a grip on yourself. If we shoot now, our plan will definitely fail," Yoon-hyuk will answer. "We couldn't even reduce his armor with the weak point destruction skill. I'll try to weaken it." Ji-hyun managed to pull herself together and continued preparing her attack. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Chulso asked. "What can you do without your goblin? Just don't do anything. You're just getting in the way," Ji-hyun replied dismissively. "Why are you looking down on me just because I don't have a goblin? In any case, it's your fault I couldn't bring my goblin here. I'll let you fight until you die." The Iron Giant has set his sights on Death Harbinger Ji-hyun. "I knew it," Yoon-hyuk pleaded with the monster to divert attention to himself. "Where are you looking? Your opponent is me," he shouted at the Iron Giant. Yoon-hyuk of Darkness used the skill Dual Blade. The monster howled from the damage it received. "That's not all," Yoon-hyuk said, and he repeated the attack with the same skill. "We need to not only distract the monster, but also inflict as much damage on it as possible," Yoon-hyuk thought. And he carried out the third attack. "After 3 full attacks from me, you finally consider me a threat?" The Greasy Giant chose Yoon-hyuk of the Darkness as his target. Yoon-hyuk finally managed to achieve his goal. Thanks to 3 powerful attacks, Yoon-hyuk managed to reduce the Iron Giant's HP from 30,000 to 22,460. "Now I just have to buy Ji-hyun more time," Yoon-hyuk thought as he used the Quick Dodge skill, which allowed him to avoid all physical attacks for 3 seconds. Unfortunately, his mana was not enough to successfully use this skill. He missed the Iron Giant's blow and was defeated. Yoon-hyuk from Darkness has died. "You're all idiots. You were so confident, but you couldn't do anything." "I didn't need to be reborn," Chulso shouted in irritation. "What are you talking about? Do you think I'm stupid because I'm loading this bow instead of running away?" "You're the one who ruined everything with your revival," Ji-hyun said angrily. "You'd think you could have won if I hadn't been reborn." Then the monster roared again, and they had to stop their argument. "I need another 10 seconds to fully charge my bow," said the Death Harbinger. But the steel monster has once again targeted Ji-hyun. "She doesn't have those 10 seconds. I'm not fully charged yet, but it seems there's no other choice but to shoot now." "You can't move while you're loading, can you?" Chulso asked with a sly smile. "What are you doing?" Ji-hyun screamed. "Don't come near me, pervert." Chulso put Ji-hyun on his shoulder and ran. "You need another 10 seconds, right?" The Iron Giant tried to hit them, but missed. They moved too fast. "No way! How can you move faster than Yoon-hyuk from Darkness?" Ji-hyun exclaimed in surprise. "It's just that I just put all my points into agility. My movement speed is comparable to an assassin." Chulso grinned. "If you are ready, then shoot faster. Don't rush me. Do you think it's easy to aim moving so fast? If I miss, it's all over. Don't say that. You all owe me for the blood I shed and for the superior healing crystal." Kim Chulso moved so fast that the monster simply couldn't hit him. Ji-hyun finally fully charged her Death Harbinger arrow skill. She put all her remaining health into it. She had 1% HP left, but they were out of luck. The Iron Giant used the World Destroyer skill. "That bastard was hiding such a strong skill," Chulso thought doomedly. The attack covers the entire area. Ji-hyun has 1% health left. Chulso has 100 HP. It looks like they can't escape. "There is too much debris here. Because of this, I can't attack him," Ji-hyun screamed. "The memories of playing with my friends will stay with me forever." "Those were good times," Chulso said blissfully. Suddenly there was a loud crack, and a huge crack appeared through the wall of the dungeon. A goblin emerged from it. "What took you so long, you bastard? I summoned you a week ago," Chulso yelled. This thing damaged the space itself to sleep inside? How is that possible? Ji-hyun was shocked. Goblin protected Chulso and Ji-hyun by using Goblin Shield. The steel giant roared in displeasure when he saw his attack blocked. Now it's our turn. Ji-hyun finally released the Death Harbinger arrow. The arrow pierced the monster, leaving a huge hole in its chest. The Iron Giant has been defeated, and a message has appeared stating that the hidden dungeon, the lair of the Iron Giant, has been cleared. Ji-hyun finally believed that they had won, her level increasing from 27 to 31. Kim Chulseo increased his level from 31 to 34. Reward? Give me my reward quickly, Chulseo roared. All dead characters were resurrected after successfully completing the raid. I can taste blood in my mouth. If the boss was higher level, we wouldn't have gotten off so easy, Patton Annihilator grumbled. Now explain to me what happened here. Yoon-hyuk from Darkness said wearily. Meanwhile, Kim Chulseo grabbed all the dropped rewards for himself and screamed hysterically that he would not give them to anyone. Ji-hyun was unpleasantly surprised by his greed. She was surprised to discover that she had not met the requirements for the hidden class. Isn't completing the hidden dungeon enough for this? She thought sadly. I only met the conditions to upgrade to the hidden class after I gained the Goblin Lord's favor, Chulseo recalled. It turns out that you can progress by fulfilling the necessary conditions without even defeating the boss. Chulseo tried to get as many awards as possible. Wait, even though we defeated the boss together, others also fought and we need to distribute the reward after consulting with everyone. Ji-hyun tried to reason with him. But Chulseo did not listen to anyone and continued to hug the treasures. He's been like this ever since, Ji-hyun said sadly. We successfully defeated the raid boss, and this is the second time you've helped us, so we won't be greedy about the reward. Darkness Yoon-hyuk reassured Chulseo. Meanwhile, Sungryul activated the skill Cunning. I knew you would betray me a second time because you did it before, Chulseo yelled. If we wanted to eliminate you, we would have done it a long time ago. We don't mind you taking these awards, but there is a bow among them, Yoon-hyuk said. Indeed, one of the rewards that dropped was the unique item Iron Giant's bow. What's wrong with this onion? This bow can only be wielded by a player of the appropriate class and cannot be sold or traded. But I still want this item, Chulseo said. However, I can refuse it and let Ji-hyun take it, but I want to get something in return. What are you talking about? It's not a tradable item, Yoon-hyuk said. Yes, I won't be able to use it if I take it, but then none of you will get it, so you will have to pay for it, Chulseo said. It looks like this guy was waiting for us to resurrect so he could extort money from us for this item. This nasty guy reminds me so much of that goblin, Yoon-hyuk thought. Meanwhile, the goblin hid among the rock fragments so that the guild members wouldn't see him. The parties came to an agreement and Ji-hyun received the bow. She is now a level 31 archer and the owner of the unique item Iron Giant's bow. We made a deal with you, but I must say, you really know how to be hateful. Where are you going now? Asked Yoon-hyuk from the darkness. Of course, to where you people are not, Chulseo answered. That's a great idea. Yoon-hyuk turned around and led the Everton guild members. Ji-hyun Death Harbinger cast a parting glance at Chulseo, and Kim Chulseo and the goblin went their separate ways. Chulseo was of course sorry to give up the unique bow, but in return he received the thief's glove. With it you can steal anything, but only once. But the main treasure is the refined steel. As rewards for the raid, Chulseo received 1 refined steel and 3 crushed steel. The city of Phoenix El Basar in Fiorandella. The city streets were filled with high-level players wearing expensive clothes and carrying high-quality equipment. I can already smell the money. It looks like I'll be able to pay off my debt quickly, Kim Chulseo rejoiced. But first, he needed to acquire some good equipment. His old armor couldn't withstand even 1 blow from the Iron Giant. He's been wearing his current armor since level 3, and for some reason it has a negative defense rating. Suddenly, the goblin pulled him by the leg of his trousers. Don't you dare get us into any trouble here, Chulseo warned him. But then a huge monster appeared in front of them. Why is there a boss-level monster here, Goblin? Protect me from it, Kim shouted. Wow, I've never seen anyone summon a goblin. Is that your summoned monster? A pleasant female voice was heard. These words were spoken by a beautiful woman sitting on the monster's head. She turned out to be Irene, a level 76 summoner. It turns out that this is also a summoned monster if there is a person riding it, thought Chulseo. You don't need to be afraid. Michelle is very obedient when she is in the village, the woman said. This beautiful woman was incredibly strong. The entire Everton Guild would not have stood a chance in a fight against her. Dear child, would you do me the honor of telling me your name? Asked the woman. I'm Zikim Chulseos. Chulseo introduced himself using his game nickname. No, I'm talking about the child next to you. Haven't you thought of a name for him yet? I heard you called him Goblin. Who even names their summoned monsters? Chulseo said indignantly. But this is completely in vain. One-sided relationships can be very unstable. Look at your summoned one. He took an aggressive pose after hearing "protect me from the master who does not even call him by name." "Well, goodbye then. I think you'll be less boring the next time we meet, Skim Chulsos," the woman said, continuing on her way. "Thank you very much for the advice," was all Chulso could say in response. "Wait, why do you have trash instead of equipment?" Someone's voice was heard. It was Humphrey the Rude, who looked like a blacksmith. Humphrey offered to buy Chulso a breastplate of solid steel for 350 gold. "Even though I have a goblin, I still need at least a minimum level of protection," Chulso thought, and made a deal. "You have a good eye for quality equipment. I made this breastplate from good steel especially for idiots like you." Humphrey the Rude lived up to his nickname. Chulso put on the armor, but he couldn't take a step in it. It turns out that the breastplate requires 24 strength points to use, and he put all his points into dexterity to defeat the Iron Giant. Chulso tried to sell the breastplate back, but Humphrey the Rude would only buy the piece of junk armor for 30 gold. Here, Chulso finally noticed the exclamation mark above Humphrey's head. It turns out he'd been scammed by an NPC this whole time. "Where is he? I can't find him!" Humphrey suddenly shouted. "My hammer is missing. Without it, I can't forge anything." When Chulso pointed out a number of other hammers of varying sizes, Humphrey replied that this was different. "Give me back my hammer. It should be in the dungeon at the entrance to the village now," said Humphrey the Rude. A message appeared in front of Chulso. Quest: find the right hammer for Humphrey. Reward: skill that allows you to process materials to create armor. So this is a quest. It finally dawned on Chulso. The materials obtained from the hidden boss were insanely expensive, and if they were processed into equipment, it would be even more expensive. Without a second thought, Chulso accepted the quest. "It's good that I'm alone. The other members of the group would only get in my way," thought Chulso. "With a goblin, I can complete such a simple dungeon in just 30 minutes. But then he noticed another condition of the task. If Humphrey dies, it will fail. This level 13 character has tagged along with him and will have to be protected, otherwise the task will not be completed. Taking advantage of his high speed due to investing points in agility, Chulso decided to run away from the NPC, hoping that he would stay put. But then a report came out that Humphrey the Rude had been attacked. Humphrey the Brute, level 13, was currently fighting mobs of level 30 and above, and his health was rapidly depleting. "Goblin, forward!" Chulso shouted. He rushed to the aid of Humphrey the Rude, and instantly dealt with the monsters. "I knew you were no match for me," Humphrey roared, and he rushed in pursuit of the surviving monsters. Kim Chulso realized it was time to change tactics and ordered the goblin to kill all the mobs. Inspired, Humphrey continued to attack the monsters, uttering menacing cries. At the same time, a goblin paved the way for him among the mobs. "It looks like Humphrey won't die and will be able to complete the quest," Chulso thought. Humphrey the Rude told Chulso that he used to be a warrior and had mastered the battle cry skill, which provokes monsters. He roared wildly and demonstrated his mastery of the skill. The battle cry reached the farthest corners of the surrounding area and attracted the attention of the monsters. More and more high-level monsters began to come out to join the battle against them. "We could have easily passed them by, but you attracted all the monsters in the area with your battle cry?" Chulso was furious. The goblin continued to methodically clear the dungeon of mobs. It turned out that the main difficulty of this quest was that you had to drag that idiot Humphrey along with you and make sure he didn't die. Kim Chulso heard a strange sound. "It's a trap, run!" shouted Humphrey the Rude. A small light appeared in the depths of the underground passage, which turned into 3 arrows flying at them. Chulso quickly took cover behind the goblin and therefore received 0 damage. However, the 3rd arrow hit Humphrey in the chest and his health was rapidly declining. Rude Humphrey was poisoned and died. Chulso was furious. The quest was ruined. He wanted to kill Humphrey again to get angry at him. While Chulso was rushing through the city, a strange man in glasses was watching him. "Finally I found you, Kim Chulsos," he said. "Why do you have trash for gear?" Humphrey the Rude said as an enraged Chulso ran up to him. "And yes, thanks for giving me back the hammer," he continued. A stunned Chulso looked at the messages and saw that Humphrey's quest was completed. The hammer was found, and he could now craft equipment from the obtained materials. "The hammer fell after the first rat was killed," Humphrey explained to a stunned Chulso. He then began to explain how to craft equipment and how the quality of the armor depended on the amount of sweat the blacksmith put into it. He used high-quality steel alloy in his work. The best equipment comes from the hands of only the best blacksmiths. It's great equipment, but there's no point in telling idiots like you about it. The armor is made from materials dropped by the hidden boss, Chulso realized. Rare blue steel light armor. Usage requirement, level 36, dexterity 24, 1% chance to activate destruction of heaven and earth. I won't ask you for money to make this armor, but don't you dare thank me for it, said Humphrey the Rude. Suddenly, PK mode was activated and Chulso miraculously dodged the blade flying at him. An unknown man wearing glasses tried to stab Kim Chulso with a sword. You managed to dodge my attack, which means you are really strong enough to beat the lady half to death, said the man with glasses. I've pumped up my agility quite well, but what does all this mean? What other lady? Chulso asked, perplexed. Don't play dumb. You were in the mistress's last squad. Your name is Kim Chulso's, the unknown person said. Don't pretend you don't know who Catherine is. Hearing this name, Chulso began to remember. Catherine Lee is the girl who once tried to charm him into joining their squad. She was part of a group of fighters who used him to break through the rock, and then betrayed and tried to kill him. I don't know what that woman told you, but she was the one who set me up and stabbed me in the back, and I was the one who suffered in that situation, Chulso shouted. You dare say that you are a victim? You are alive and well, but my lady is in a coma and cannot come to her senses. Chulso was stunned. He knew that the damage he had done to Catherine Geiger had left her more than just physically damaged, but he didn't expect her to become a vegetable. This is all because of Geiger. I didn't do anything to her and I'm not to blame for this, Chulso shouted. It is not for you to decide whether you are guilty or not. Because of you, my lady suffered. Her position as the heir to the Semyon group is under threat. The bespectacled man tried to strike another blow. The man in glasses was stunned. He was unable to inflict any damage on Chulso, who was invulnerable with the goblin's defense. Could you tell me more about the health of the daughter of the chairman of the Semyon group? Asked Kim Chulso. Semyon Group is a company that has gained recognition not only in Korea but also throughout the world. It deals with cars, smartphones, semiconductors, and more. And the daughter of the chairman of this company is now in the hospital in an unconscious state. You said she encountered a level 80 monster in the dungeon? The bespectacled man asked. Yes, perhaps she was so shocked by her defeat by the monster that she still can't come to her senses, Chulso suggested. But why did you manage to get out of there, even though you were on the 3rd level at the time? The lady who was preparing to go to the 40th ended up in a coma, and you're the only one who wasn't affected by it? I was just lucky that I was able to get out because I managed to get a hidden class in a hidden dungeon, Chulso replied. Despite the help of the best doctors, she is still in such a condition. If she were in my place, she would already be dead, he thought. A 3rd level player got a hidden class and managed to escape the dungeon in one piece. But that doesn't solve the problem, does it? But isn't there at least a small chance that she will survive? Chulso asked. The best doctors treated her, but they still couldn't say why she couldn't wake up. But I can't just sit back and wait for her to wake up. If she got hurt in the game, maybe she needs to be treated in the game too, Chulso suggested. You can try, there is no other way out anyway. I read in some article about a man who fell into a coma, but Heaven's Gate brought him back to consciousness. The chances are slim, but it's better than sitting and doing nothing. Chulso and the man in glasses came to an agreement. Catherine Lee and Phoenix El Basar. Chulso was surprised that the chairman allowed his unconscious daughter to enter the game. But if they find out that I deceived the chairman of the Semyon group, then I'm finished, Chulso thought. In fact, I've never heard of a game helping anyone regain consciousness. But in any case, I will become a person who at least tried to save her. Of course it will be cool if she comes to her senses, but if nothing works out, I will still be the winner. I just need to play the role well, as if I'm trying to resurrect her. But I'll have to drag her around everywhere. And how can I do that if she can't even walk on her own? Here the goblin suggested an interesting idea to Chulso. Indeed, if you pull her, she will follow you. Kim Chulso walked in front, and behind him the goblin led Catherine by the collar. However, the sight of a beautiful girl being led on a leash by a goblin caused outrage among the townspeople. Chulso tried to explain, but to no avail. It looks like I'll have to run for my life again, Chulso thought. This way! A familiar voice rang out. It was Sungryul the Cunning who called them to follow him. So it was you who summoned the goblin back then? Asked Sungryul the Cunning. I am grateful for your help, but I still don't trust you. Tell me what the Everton Guild is planning, Chulso said. Last time we got together to do a raid, but guild members rarely do that. You're the guild's informant. Can you tell me about this place? Kim Chulso asked. I'll tell you about Fiorendella, but we need to go somewhere else. Follow me. Chulso activated PK mode and Sungryul began to speak rapidly. I don't know much about Fiorendell, but the local boss appears rarely and you need to fulfill special conditions to do so. By the way, why are you so obsessed with dungeons? Sungryul asked. It's obvious that completing difficult dungeons gives more rewards, Chulso replied. You've just arrived in Fiorendell, no need to rush into the dungeons. In Phoenix El Basar, there is a castle where you can complete the main quests. Chulso was delighted. By completing the main quests, you can gain access to high-level locations. He turned to the goblin and saw with horror that Catherine was missing. Where could she have gone? Why are you hanging out with some loser? Two unpleasant guys were pestering Catherine in the meantime. Won't you be more comfortable with us? Chulso was terrified. If Catherine's character took damage while she was unconscious, she might die, and then it would be the end for him. Suddenly, a man in glasses contacted him. "The lady is fine. Show her to me," he asked. "I'm very busy right now. I'll show it to you later." Chulso replied out of breath and cut off the connection. The man with glasses was alarmed by Chulso's answer. "Don't disturb him. Something bad could happen to her." Someone's voice was heard. It was Ki-moon, a level 76 knight, the character of the chairman of the Semyun group, Han Ki-moon, Catherine's father. "Why did you entrust your daughter to a guy like him? If she can be cured in the game, it would be better to entrust it to one of us." "I don't believe she can be cured," Han Ki-moon replied to the astonished, bespectacled man. In this game, Catherine felt free that if she was destined to die, even if the last thing she saw was Heaven's Gate. Meanwhile, Chulso and the goblin raced through the city in search of Catherine. Drenched in sweat, he thought about what he should do to find Catherine. Suddenly, he remembered that he had received another point and began to look for what skill he could get for it. He rejected the share health with goblin skill outright. Why the hell should he share health with a guy who hadn't shed a drop of blood? But the goblin throw skill caught his attention. Without thinking twice, he activated it and launched the goblin high into the sky. While surveying the city from above, the goblin noticed something and pointed to the place. Overjoyed, Chulso immediately ran there. "My Catherine, I have come for you." But next to Catherine stood two unpleasant types. "Look, it's that jerk who was with her before," one of them said. "Who are you anyway?" Chulso was indignant. "We are two handsome guys whose hobby is saving women in trouble." "Die, freak!" they shouted and rushed at Chulso. He just grinned and called the goblin. He arrived on time and dealt with the unpleasant guys in no time. The sounds of the fight attracted the attention of the city guard. Arriving at the scene, he saw an unsightly picture. Two fallen bodies and Chulso, who was dragging a beautiful girl on a leash. "You bastard, you killed those two and kidnapped the girl!" the guard shouted, rushing into the attack. Chulso tried to explain, but realized that it was unlikely to succeed. "Looks like I'll have to finish him off quickly." "So here you are. I've been looking for you for so long." Sungryul the Insidious appeared. "Killing an NPC guard could lead to unpredictable consequences, trust me." He whispered to Chulso. "Listen, you work for us day and night without stopping," he said to the guard. "Take this and pretend you didn't see anything." Sungryul the Sly handed the guard a gift bag. "You idiot, how dare you bribe an honest man?" The guard roared and dragged Sungryul along with him, forgetting about Chulso. "They arrested him instead of me?" It turns out my grandfather was a pretty good man. Kim Chulso attempted to enter the castle to complete a task, but was stopped by a guard. "Don't waste your energy. These doors won't open anytime soon," someone's voice said. "I'm Shin." The stranger introduced himself, an exclamation point hanging above his head. He was another NPC. "If you suddenly break into the castle gates, then you are new to our city. I love the sparkle in your eyes. It's the sparkle of an adventurer. Okay, I choose you to help me with the work in the Lost Ruins." Chulso received a new quest: to bring the golem core from the Lost Ruins to Shin. Kim Chulso in front of the entrance to the Lost Ruins. With my pumped-up agility, I would have gotten through all the traps without any problems, but I have to drag this girl around with me. "Goblin, I'll go first and then I'll call you, and you keep a tight hold on her leash," he ordered the goblin. Chulso quickly ran through the traps and then summoned a goblin. He rushed after him, but it turned out that Rally's skill only summons a goblin and has no effect on Catherine. Catherine Lee was left behind. The leash jerked her sharply by the neck and her body flew over the fire traps. "She's going to fall, Goblin, do something!" Chulso shouted. The goblin tugged harder on the leash, but it didn't make things any better. The unconscious girl was being thrown from side to side on her leash. This was very dangerous. "Catherine, come to your senses, you can't die here," Chulso shouted. Catherine didn't react in any way, but old memories flashed through her mind. "Did you come home so late because you were playing with friends? Friends at your age are pathetic and useless connections. You shortened your skirt and put on makeup like some girl from a bar? Do you want to be like these pathetic, insignificant people? I was wrong, forgive me. Mom, help me, Dad wants to kill me, stop him. You are the only dark spot in my life. Catherine, what should we do?" Chulso asked the goblin as Catherine fell and stopped showing any signs of life. You won't be seeing such a beauty for the rest of your days anyway, so grab her and give her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Chulso was about to begin. Maybe this would help her wake up from the shock. The call from the man in glasses, as always, came at the wrong time. So that's what you were going to show me later. I'll finish you off now. I know that she is fine. The doctors are constantly monitoring her condition and will let me know if anything happens. In addition, she's wearing the highest level armor, the white spider wizard dress. So Catherine is alive, and in her dress she is invulnerable? Thought Chulso. I'm very worried about the lady, so show her to me immediately, demanded the man in glasses. But Chulso had already dropped the call. You heard, Goblin? She's invulnerable in armor. Let's run to the boss room. One of the traps. A rolling ball rolled over Catherine without causing her any harm. When a broken bridge appeared in front of them, the goblin threw Catherine across it, and Chulso walked along the taut leash. When the golem appeared in front of him, Chulso hit him with Catherine without thinking. The Goblin Lord appreciated this deed and awarded him another goblin point. He dared to attack my trap-breaking tool. Finish him off, Goblin! Chulso shouted. No one noticed how Catherine's hand moved. The goblin fearlessly rushed at the enemy, and with one blow he killed the golem. I didn't even have to try very hard, Chulso said with satisfaction. Suddenly the golem came to life. After his resurrection, he became even stronger, reaching level 45. Chulso sent the goblin into battle again. He struck again, and the golem is defeated again, and was reborn again. Now the golem is already level 50. Goblin, block him, don't attack him, Chulso shouted, but it was too late. The golem exploded again with a powerful roar, to be reborn again a few moments later. It looks like he will be resurrected endlessly and become stronger. Here Chulso remembered how the members of the Everton Guild fought the Iron Giant. Then they identified the monster's weak points, but he doesn't know how to do it. Chulso decided to escape from the strengthened golem using his high speed. Catherine watched with a detached expression on her face. Suddenly a memory flashed in her eyes. The golem's foot was approaching her. Horror appeared in his eyes. She remembered how she had once been crushed by the foot of a level 80 monster, Geiger, in a hidden dungeon. Catherine couldn't bear it any longer and screamed terribly. Catherine, is she okay? Chulso asked in surprise. What's going on here? What is this? Catherine screamed wildly. Chulso looked in surprise at the awakened Catherine. She screamed hysterically and demanded an immediate explanation of how she ended up there after almost dying. Chulso remembered using her body as a tool to break into and overcome the dungeon's traps and broke out in a cold sweat. In any case, no matter what he did to her, she not only remained unharmed, but also came to her senses. He saved the life of the heiress of the Semyon group and should receive a huge reward for it. Chulso began to tell Catherine how, on the instructions of the chairman, he took care of her after she lost consciousness, and his care was very effective. After all, she finally woke up. While Chulso was speaking, a powerful blow from Golev sent him flying. Catherine, seeing the huge monster approaching her, squealed in fear and ran. She was terribly scared, not only because of the monster, but also because her father found out that she had played Heaven's Gate. Catherine's body, hooked up to the game's entry equipment, shuddered and screamed. The medical staff and butler, seeing that she had woken up, rushed to her. She woke up, but it looks like she's horrified by what's happening in the game, probably because of that scoundrel Chulso. What did this bastard do to their mistress? The butler demanded that the screaming Catherine be disconnected from the equipment, but the doctors dissuaded him. The session could not be interrupted, as this was the only chance to heal her. Indeed, it is impossible to exit the game during a dungeon raid, as disconnecting while experiencing pain is especially dangerous. The butler adjusted his glasses and decided that he should enter the game and check everything out for himself. Meanwhile, Golem used the stone rocket skill. Catherine ran towards the exit with all her might, but she didn't have time. The golem's blow almost reached her. She was saved by the fact that the goblin intervened in time and blocked the golem's attack. Chulso shouted to Catherine that she couldn't escape from the golem at that speed. Seeing that Catherine was crying, he asked if she was okay. She was scared, very scared. Chulso thought that in this state she would only be a hindrance and ordered the goblin to knock her out, who obediently swung. But then Catherine, with tears in her eyes, asked Chulso to save her. He assured her that he would lead her out of the dungeon safe and sound. But Catherine screamed that that was not what she was asking for. She wanted him to save her from her cruel father, mother, and that vile Semyon group. She doesn't want to be hit again. They were interrupted by a signal from the butler, who demanded to see Catherine immediately. Chulso barely managed to stop the goblin and ordered him to hold back the golem so that they could escape. Chulso assured the man with glasses that he was doing everything possible to help the lady recover and showed her a smile. The butler was puzzled. Catherine's appearance did not show that she was frightened and had come to her senses. Her eyes were still empty. The butler thought the situation was rather strange and ordered the lady to be taken out of the dungeon immediately so that she could be removed from the game. Chulso didn't argue with him and simply hung up. He told Catherine that if she wanted him to help her, she would have to pay him more. The girl gradually calmed down and tried to say something. Chulso stated that he really needed the money and therefore, if she did not pay, he would tell her that she had woken up and demand a reward from the Semyon group. Catherine promised that she would find the money and even give him all her equipment if he kept everything a secret. But this was not enough for Kim Chulso. He called the goblin again to get out of the dungeon. It turned out that during this time the situation had worsened. Instead of simply holding the golem back, the goblin continued to kill him. And as a result, he reached level 170. Chulso realized that he wouldn't survive the blow from a level 170 monster and started running. Suddenly the golem froze. It was Catherine who used the mage skill icicle explosion. Chulso and the goblin were surprised why the monster suddenly stopped moving. The golem was frozen using Catherine's skill, which was intended for high-level opponents. She shouted to Chulso to run quickly, as the monster would soon wake up. All three quickly ran towards the exit. The door leading out of the dungeon was already before my eyes. But then Catherine's leash got caught on a rock. The collar jerked her by the neck, and she collapsed to the ground. Chulso stopped and turned back. Catherine screamed wildly and begged for help. Chulso remembered that something similar had already happened some time ago. Then Catherine was dying under Geiger's foot, but he did not have the strength to help her. This time it's different. He definitely has to help her. But last time she lost consciousness from a hit from a level 80 monster. Now she was facing a level 170 monster. Maybe the doctors could help her, but definitely not him. So Chulso turned around and ran to the exit. Catherine watched with tears in her eyes as Chulso ran away. He is the same as her cruel mother, who abandoned her when her father abused her. Everyone abandons and betrays her. The golem's attack was approaching. It seemed like nothing could save her this time. Suddenly there was a loud explosion and luminous rays pierced the space. A figure appeared and blocked the golem's attack. It was Shin, the NPC who gave Chulso the quest. He said that they had held out for a long time and now he would have to fight the monster. Chulso realized that the quest was designed this way. They couldn't destroy the golem's core because it didn't exist, and the player was doomed to failure. And after the player finds himself in a hopeless situation, an NPC should appear and defeat the monster. Shin sternly asked the monster how he dared to treat his servants like that. He bravely rushed at the golem and dealt him a terrible blow. Chulso thought that the NPC would easily defeat the monster, but something went wrong. Shin's blow did practically no harm to the golem. However, Shin declared in a triumphant tone that he didn't even have time to break a sweat. The golem sent the NPC flying with a powerful counterattack. Chulso was surprised to find that Shin was only level 70. Naturally, he was no match for a level 170 monster. Chulso finally understood the mechanics of the quest. It was given to players just above level 30, and the golem's starting strength was at level 40. Even if the player defeated the monster, it would resurrect, become level 45, and defeat the player. After that, Shin would appear and easily deal with a level 45 or, at most, 50 monster. But the quest scenario didn't include a goblin who, by constantly killing the golem, was able to bring it to level 170. The NPC again triumphantly declared that he hadn't even had time to break a sweat. And Chulso realized that the quest wasn't designed for this kind of development. It looks like Shin won't be able to handle a level 170 monster. Chulso thought that the monster could not be killed without destroying its core. There was no core before, but with the appearance of Shin, it should appear too. Meanwhile, the NPC continued to fight the golem to no avail, and repeat victorious phrases about how he didn't even have time to sweat. Chulso gave the goblin a command, and he used the stone throwing skill. It was aimed at the exact spot where the NPC had been unsuccessfully hitting. The golem swayed and fell dead. Shin said they would have died if it weren't for him, but now they're safe and sound. It looks like the quest has moved forward. Chulso looked at Catherine with alarm. It seemed she wasn't seriously injured and was already getting up. Shin transported them to the square in front of the castle and stated that he had chosen the right people and that the fact that they managed to survive in such a situation was a testament to their strength. He also hinted that the real business would soon begin and mentioned his acquaintance with the vice-captain of the Knights, Alphonse. Chulso barely listened to him. He was thinking about the fact that he had actually hit the girl in the back. Shin, having finished speaking, waved his hand goodbye to them and hurried away. Trying to break the awkward silence, Chulso said that Shin seemed to be sick in the head. But Catherine continued to maintain a painful silence. Unable to bear it, Chulso screamed that it was his fault that he had abandoned Catherine. Suddenly, a new character appeared on the scene. He was a tall, well-built knight wearing incredibly expensive, high-level equipment. Catherine recognized him with horror as her father. Catherine's father said he suspected she had regained consciousness after the attack. He added that he had hoped that Catherine had become more serious, but she continued to pull cheap pranks. The knight turned to Chulso, thanked him for his care of Catherine, and promised that he would receive a worthy reward for it. He extended his hand to his daughter and led her along with him. Looking at Catherine leaving silently, Chulso felt like the last scum. Chulso knew it was wrong and ugly to abandon her, but he thought that this time he could still save her, so he shouted at them to stop. The knight and Catherine turned around in surprise. Chulso told the knight that even he knew who he was. Chairman of the Samyang group Han Ki-moon, known for his sensitivity, kindness, and that he was a gentleman. Catherine looked at him in bewilderment. If such an incredible person came to take Catherine away, then why does she have such a gloomy expression on her face? With these words, Chulso grabbed Catherine by the hand and called her to him. He shouted at Catherine why she was standing there when he was trying to save her, but Catherine continued to follow her father. Looking after her, Chulso thought that he did not deserve forgiveness. He would forever remain just a goblin. Suddenly, a guard asked him how he knew the King of Knights, who was famous for clearing out the Duke's great library. In the game, Catherine's father was known as Ki-moon X, a level 76 knight. But due to Chulso's words, the people around him recognized him as the chairman of the Semyon group. The crowd erupted in cheers, and someone asked who the sexy girl next to him was. Han Ki-moon replied that it was just a member of his squad. People nearby heard that the chairman of the Semyon group was there and rushed to look at him. Suddenly, Chulso heard a familiar voice coming from somewhere below. It was Sungryul the Cunning, who explained that he had managed to escape from the guards and hide here in the sewers. Sungryul also noticed that the girl whom Han Ki-moon called a member of his squad was quite badly injured. It's strange, because in Heaven's Gate, the pain from the monster's blows is transmitted directly to the brain, while there are no bruises or wounds left on the body. Sungryul explained that while watching from below, he noticed marks of violence on Catherine's legs. Chulso began to act decisively and loudly demanded that the King of Knights stop. He asked how it was possible to kidnap a person so brazenly in front of many people. The King of Knights looked puzzled and asked Chulso to stop these baseless accusations. But Chulso continued to escalate the situation. He asked if the chairmen of large companies were not subject to laws and stated that the woman next to him was his girlfriend. The crowd began to murmur with discontent. Chulso added that they had been living together for a long time. But judging by the calm expression on the chairman's face, he was not particularly disturbed by Chulso's words, and he said that he was probably confused with someone else. Chulso asked the King of Knights who this girl was to him, and why he had taken her into his ranks despite the fact that she was dressed so promiscuously. There were murmurs in the crowd that the chairman was probably cheating, but he stated that he was not obliged to answer such questions and began to leave. Suddenly, another figure appeared on the stage. It was Seungryul the Sly in a butler's costume. He claimed to be the butler of the Seaman Group, and upon hearing that Mrs. Seaman Group had woken up, he immediately came here. He knelt before Catherine and called her the future of the Seaman Group. Catherine watched what was happening in surprise and did not understand what was happening. Realizing that Catherine was indeed Han Ki-moon's daughter, the crowd began to roar again. Chulso told the King of Knights that he could confirm that Catherine was his daughter, thereby admitting that he had improperly raised the heiress of the Samyang Group. Chulso also whispered to him that if he said he had mistaken her for someone else, he would tell everyone about it. "How dare you, you cur!" Suddenly, the King of Knights roared to those around him not to fall for it, and the crowd shook with the power of his voice. Chulso thought that the old man had some kind of powerful persuasion skill. The King of Knights continued to talk about the imposter who is posing as the butler of the Semyon Group. And this girl he doesn't know. They all united to blackmail him. But he, chairman of the Samyang Group Han Ki-moon, will not give in to this blackmail, and therefore he will destroy these three now. With these words, Han Ki-moon rushed into the attack. However, his blow was parried by an unknown person. The goblin reacted in time. Then the goblin ran towards Chulso as fast as he could. He thought it wouldn't be very good if everyone realized that he was collaborating with the guy who had punched the chairman. So he used the goblin throw skill and launched it high into the sky. The crowd was surprised that the unknown person had dealt with the King of Knights with one blow. Chulso asked Catherine to come to her senses quickly. He tried to lift the girl, but she screamed hysterically for him to let her go and accused him of not even intending to save her and of not caring whether she was alive or not. Chulso told Catherine that she would never see a knight on a white horse who would save her. Only a scumbag like him can help her, whether she likes it or not. Chulso didn't know how many bad things her father had done to Catherine, but now heavenly punishment has descended upon him for this. Chulso told Catherine that it was time for her to stop groveling and begging for salvation, and that it was time to give her father a good beating. She's really good at stabbing people in the back. Here Chulso declared that he had probably made a mistake and that this was not his girlfriend at all. Under Catherine's uncomprehending gaze, he turned and ran. Catherine looked at Chulso as he walked away in surprise. Sung Ryul, dressed as a butler, approached the girl and said that if she had anything to say, now was the time. He helped her up and they stood in front of the crowd. At first, she silently collected her thoughts, and then she began to speak. She described how the seemingly respectable chairman of the Semyon group beat her and abused her to the point that she wanted to die. All major news agencies reported that Catherine is the daughter of the chairman of the Saemyeong group, Han Ki-moon, and that he subjected her to domestic violence from an early age. Catherine provided evidence to support her words. The scandal left Semyon Group's image hopelessly damaged and its shares plummeting. Chairman Han Ki-moon suddenly fell ill, or rather, pretended to be ill. Chulso thought that overall, this story ended quite well. However, he was concerned that the company might hire a hitman to eliminate him in retaliation. Sungryul the Insidious hastened to reassure him. According to him, photographs of Chulso's confrontation with the chairman of the Semyon Group have already spread around the world. Therefore, if something happens to him, Han Ki-moon will be the first to be blamed. But Chulso did not calm down and continued to lament that he had gone against such a large company and had not received any reward. In passing, he asked how Sungryul had managed to get such an expensive suit. He admitted that he stole it and was immediately taken away by the guard. A new call came over the intercom. Seeing the man with glasses, Chulso greeted him and called him a puppet of the Semyon Group. The man with glasses thanked Chulso for helping Catherine wake up, and he expressed regret that after several years of working at the company, he still couldn't understand what was happening to it. Chulso asked if there was any reward for him, since he had done a tremendous amount of work. But the man in glasses said that he no longer worked for the company, since he could not work for a man who had bullied Catherine so much. The former butler also said that people around the world are worried about Catherine, fearing that something bad will happen to her because she has damaged the reputation of a large company. So I sent the lady to stream on AFTV. He spent his entire severance pay to set up a decent streaming studio for her. Now the whole world is watching her, and her popularity will protect her from any threats. If she doesn't go on air one day, everyone will understand that something happened to her. The lady doesn't really like doing this, but she gathered all her courage and does it. The former butler said that he would do everything to return to Catherine everything she had lost and give her everything she liked. He noted that all this is possible only thanks to Chulso, to which Chulso replied that if he expressed gratitude, then he would simply give money. The bespectacled man smiled and said that he had already sent Chulso a gift by mail, although it was not money, after which he severed the connection. Meanwhile, Catherine continued to enthusiastically stream. It looks like she'll be able to become a cool streamer. Chulso came to the post office to pick up a gift from Catherine. The employee smiled sweetly at him and went to get the parcel. She soon returned with some object, but she behaved rather strangely. This item was a rare weapon, the Summoner's Whip, made from the skin of a bloodworm that was cursed and drove those who touched it mad. Then Shin appeared with a new task. It turned out to be a cleansing of the Goblin village. Chulso showed Shin the goblin and demanded that he repeat it, looking him in the eyes. You just need to destroy the goblins that are harming people. It's a simple task, and you can complete it quickly. Chulso looked sadly at the goblin and said that they would still have to take on this. They traveled to the Goblin village in a van driven by an NPC. Chulso felt that the goblin's attitude towards him had changed and tried to talk to him to resolve all the misunderstandings between them. He apologized to the goblin for launching him into the sky with the goblin throw skill in the city, but the goblin continued to ignore him. Chulso remembered the words of the summoner Irene about how one-sided relationships are rarely stable. All attempts to establish relations with the goblin remained unsuccessful. Suddenly, some unknown goblin jumped into the van. Chulso ordered his goblin to deal with him, but for some reason he hesitated, and the new goblin dodged. And he rushed straight at Chulso. Fighting off the stranger, Chulso shouted to his goblin to do something. He swung his club, and Chulso, afraid that the goblin would hit him, shouted at him with all his might. The van driver, armed with a rifle, responded to the noise and asked what was going on. Chulso screamed that they were being attacked by monsters. The NPC said that it was probably goblins from the village and prepared to shoot. Chulso shouted to shoot the one in front. The wagon driver fired but missed. The goblin who had burst into the van suddenly spoke. He thought that his fellow goblin had been attacked and had come to save him. So that's how goblins talk. Chulso was surprised. He thought gloomily that, as a goblin summoner, he could communicate with them and was now becoming less and less different from them. The goblin meanwhile squealed that he did not want to harm anyone and asked for mercy. But Chulso, outraged by the attack, ominously promised to slaughter all the goblins in the village. The driver reported that they had finally arrived at their destination. Before them lay the road to the goblin village. The driver said that he was too lazy to go any further, and he drove off into the distance, leaving them on the road. Chulso said that they were likely to encounter a large number of traps, and so it was good that he left the goblin who attacked them alive. The captured goblin continued to squeal that the other goblins had done nothing wrong to him, and that he had simply made a mistake in thinking that his fellow goblin was in danger, to which Chulso replied that he didn't care. The goblin asked why he came to their village, because they are a peaceful people and it is people who attack them, and not the other way around. Chulso thought that he had no animosity towards the goblins. They had never done anything bad to him. He had to kill them only because it was indicated in the task. Then a female goblin with a child appeared and addressed the captured goblin as dear. Chulso was surprised by such treatment. The goblin he was holding named the female Tina Mason and screamed at them to run away. Chulso commanded his goblin to throw a stone at them. He carried out the order. But then the captured goblin with a furious movement broke free from Chulso's hands and rushed forward. He tried to protect the female and child from the stone with his body. The goblin fell down, hit by a rock, and the female and child looked tremblingly at Chulso. Chulso approached them and told them to stop being afraid of him. He would not kill them. He stated that if there are people who kill their children for the sake of survival, then a goblin who sacrifices himself for his family cannot be bad. Chulso watched the family reunion and thought that goblins were better than humans. The goblin then invited them to enter the village. The goblins from the village surrounded Chulso and looked at him with interest. Chulso began to think that this was starting to bother him and that it was time to get out of here. But then the goblin who had climbed into their van declared that he could not let him go without giving him a treat. He invited Chulso to the hut for a feast. There he was treated to poisonous goblin soup. Chulso was about to try the soup and goblin children were running around. One of the nicknames accidentally pushed the chair he was sitting on. As a result, Chulso was doused with hot and very spicy soup. Everyone around him laughed, which eased the tension somewhat. The goblins asked him how it was that a goblin and a human could travel together and cooperate. They had never seen such a thing. Chulso replied that he and the goblin didn't get along very well, but he was the goblin summoner. One of the goblins said that they all envied the goblin who could travel with the adventurer. After all, they will never be able to leave this village. The goblin from the village asked Chulso why he looked upset. Chulso replied that the goblin had a good wife, but he, although he was a man, had no one, not even friends, and he would never have the courage to sacrifice himself for others. The goblin, whose name turned out to be Fawn, was puzzled by his words. Chulso said that whatever he could do, they could do too, and advised them to continue like this. Suddenly, Chulso sensed danger and instinctively dodged. Goblin weapons flashed next to him. The weapons stuck into the table. It turns out the goblins wanted to kill the cockroach that had climbed onto the table, but they never managed to catch him. Soon, Chulso said that it was time for him to leave. The goblins wished him luck and advised him to be careful on the road. Chulso said goodbye to them warmly. As he was leaving the village, Chulso saw a goblin lying on the ground and an unknown man with a sword above him. The stranger said loudly that he had found another goblin. Chulso recognized the dead man as James, the goblin who had fed him today. The stranger asked Chulso what he was doing in such a place. Maybe he came here to kill goblins too. The man asked if he could help him get rid of these creatures. Enraged, Chulso screamed how dare he kill his friends and turned on PK mode. He ordered the goblin to attack him. However, his goblin ignored the order. At this time, a goblin from the village rushed at the man with a sword, but he was knocked down by one blow. The goblin who attacked the stranger lay unconscious. Chulso pounced on his goblin with accusations because it was he who should have attacked, but for some reason he didn't. Then the stranger with the sword asked Chulso why he called the goblins his friends, and also turned on the PK mode, and if he had ever offended him. Shouting that he had offended him by attacking his friends, Chulso hit the stranger. Or rather, he tried to hit, because he launched a powerful counterattack. The noise of the fight was heard by the members of the group of the man with the sword. One of them, Zeros, a level 35 warrior, was surprised that Min Chul was using such powerful skills against the goblins. Another member of the squad, a girl named Heavenin, who was on level 36, suggested that he had encountered powerful goblins. Then Chulso's body suddenly collapsed in front of them. Then Min Chul, a man with a sword, appeared and declared that this crazy man had called the goblins his friends and attacked him. Hyawanan was surprised that the man called the goblins friends and asked Min Chul what it meant that he killed him in PK mode. Min Chul replied that he couldn't kill him because of his good armor. The defeated Chulso thought that he really looked like a friend of the goblins. Heavenin asked if they had to kill him too to complete the task. Meanwhile, Min Chul continued to kill goblins to complete the task. He struck with his sword left and right. Goblin Chulso laughed as he watched this. Min Chul asked the goblin why he laughed when his fellow goblins were killed. He didn't even blink an eye when Min Chul killed the cubs. That's because goblins are vile and soulless creatures. Approaching the goblin, he said that that's what boring tasks are for, to kill them. With these words, Min Chul struck the goblin. Hyawaning shouted at Min Chul to control himself. Chulso started laughing. You really think this task is boring? Then go, and fight with whoever remains there. A laughing goblin appeared, dragging the unconscious Min Chul. Seeing this, Heavenin rushed at the goblin, but she was thrown back by a blow from a club. Then Zeros rushed to attack the goblin. He used his skill Explosive Strike. Zeros told Heavenin that she had complained of boredom, but was now trembling with fear after meeting a powerful goblin. Both were surprised that the goblin was so strong, but they were confident that they would not lose. Chulso laughed when he heard that they couldn't lose. He asked the unconscious Min Chul why he lost to the goblin since everyone would laugh at him. Heavenin was indignant. Why is he so sure that they will lose? Chulso replied that humans betray, but goblins do not, and asked if they had decided to kill the goblins under the guise of a mission in order to relieve stress or just have fun. Zeros said that there was no point in wasting time on talking now. The most important thing was to deal with the goblin. Chulso thought with glee that now, when the goblin was not listening to him, if they had not attacked him themselves, he would not have done anything. He decided to try again and again gave the command to the goblin to kill them. He continued to ignore him. Chulso thought that if the goblin wasn't following his orders, maybe he should just ask him. With these thoughts, he rushed towards the goblin, and he fell to his knees before him. Chulso addressed him as the great Goblin King Emperor and said that if he did not intervene, he would die. The goblin continued to grin insolently. Chulso thought how humiliating it was to bow down before a goblin like this. It seemed like the goblin enjoyed his humiliation. Chulso promised the goblin that he would never treat him badly again. Heavenin and Zeros were indignant that he first called the goblin a friend, and now bowed at his feet. Suddenly, the goblin swept away Zeros with one blow. Chulso thought with satisfaction that his prayer had been heard. He had received a message that the Goblin King was flattered by human humiliation and was rewarding him with a goblin point. The goblin began to approach Heavenin. She was horrified. The goblin killed Zeros with one blow. He had previously easily defeated Min Chul. Heavenin decided to escape so that she could rejoin her comrades when they were resurrected. Chulso said ominously that at first they came here to kill, and now they are trying to escape. The goblin caught up with Heavenin and grabbed her by the leg. She fell backwards and sprawled on the ground. Chulso addressed the goblins. He declared that the world where creatures were oppressed simply because they were goblins had come to an end. There will be no more quests where they are oppressed, and they will not have to hide in caves. Their Messiah has finally arrived here on this earth. Chulso continued. He stated that people are traitors who stab you in the back. He told the goblins that they must kill all their enemies. Heavenin listened to his words with horror. The crowd of goblins slowly approached her. The city of Phoenix El-Basar. The guards stood at their posts and exchanged flat jokes about goblins. Suddenly, some noise was heard. A cloud of dust was approaching the city. The guards were surprised to see that it was a whole army of goblins. They were led by Chulso. Chulso told the goblins that this was a human city and that it would be destroyed today. Earlier, Chulso, calling on the goblins to kill their enemies, developed a plan for an uprising. He also ordered the goblins not to touch Heavenin. According to him, if she is killed, she will return to the village where the Resurrection Sanctuary is located, and they cannot let her go so easily. After all, she killed their comrades. He told Heavenin that since one of her team members was killed and another was unconscious in reality, it would be impossible to name the resurrection button. But she doesn't want to experience the same pain as her comrades. Chulso noticed that Huanin had a rather attractive body, and he said he wanted to ride it. Thus, Chulso now led the goblin army, riding on Heavenin's shoulders. He warned her not to even think about leaving the game, as he had all their money and weapons. She replied that she remembered this and told him to just give her the things when it was all over. Meanwhile, panic began to break out in the city due to the goblin invasion. The townspeople turned to the Adventurers Guild for help. The guild laughed at them, not believing that such weak and insignificant mobs as goblins had attacked the city. Summoner Irene was also surprised to hear the news about the goblins. Someone suggested that this was some kind of event and advised not to interfere so as not to disrupt the dungeon run schedule. One of the adventurers said that if they had to defend themselves, they could engage in a fight. While they were arguing, an enraged goblin burst into the guild. It really was them. One of the adventurers said that he initially took it as a joke as he drew his sword. Suddenly, the glass in the windows shattered into pieces and goblins climbed into them. One of the adventurers blocked their way. He used a powerful fire-type skill against them. It was Asphos, a level 58 Flame Knight and the leader of the new Fire Guild, who stated that it would be a shame if there were less than 100 in the raid. The 52nd level guild leader, Professor Jamin, answered him. He used his to scan the surrounding area. Jamin stated that there are not hundreds of them here, but tens of thousands, and even much more. Asphos was stunned. What was this overwhelming amount? A huge wave of goblins swept over the adventurers. Two adventurers standing to the side said that the city seemed to be in danger. It was Horace Philibert, a level 62 marksman and guildmaster Armstrong, who asked if he should just watch silently as it happened. His deputy, Charlotte Stone, a level 52 alchemist, confirmed that they should not interfere. The situation was also observed by the summoner Irene, who said that these goblins, unlike those she saw last time, were not at all cute. With these words, she called her monster Michelle. Michelle immediately appeared with a furious scream. Chulso decided to use one group of adventurers as an example and sent goblins after them. The adventurers were terrified and ran. One of the girls, terrified, tried to fight off the monster. To her surprise, she succeeded. She easily knocked down the goblin, who was only level 8. It was Jisuveli, a level 34 sorceress. The adventurers were inspired. The goblins turned out to be very weak mobs. There were just a lot of them. How dare these insignificant goblins come here? The adventurers used the fireball skill against them. The goblins were easily repelled by this attack. One of the adventurers shouted that the goblins could only be level 20 at most and called for them all to be destroyed. Chulso stated that the damned people began to brazenly counterattack, and again he began to bow to his goblin. He said his comrades were suffering and their morale was low, so he begged him to show strength. At that moment, Heavenin was wondering whether she should wake up after all. The adventurers gained confidence and easily eliminated the attacking goblins. They decided that destroying goblins this way was quite exciting. But then the goblin Chulso appeared. He dealt a powerful blow to the adventurers. They were instantly defeated. You impudent humans, how dare you disregard goblins? The goblins were inspired and rushed forward. They began to finish off the defeated people. Chulso shouted at them that they had enough of dealing with those who had already been defeated and needed to attack others. But the goblins continued to beat the fallen people in a frenzy. Chulso shouted at them to stop. But once they felt the goblins' blood, there was no stopping them. Chulso jumped off Heavenin and rushed into their crowd. He tried to stop one of the goblins who was dragging the girl, but the goblin sank its teeth into his hand. Chulso thought that the goblins had turned into maddened creatures. They've completely gone crazy. The situation was clearly getting out of control, but then a new character appeared. It was Shin, the NPC who gave Chulso the task of clearing out the goblin village. He killed the goblins surrounding the girl with one blow. Chulso recognized him with surprise and called him the damn Shin. Shin said it was quite strange that the goblins were able to travel all this way to get to this place. He said that these goblins were annoying. Although the adventurers do not give up and the goblins deal minor damage to them, they will not be able to withstand it for long. Shin said that the longer the battle lasted, the more unfavorable the situation would become. Therefore, it is necessary to finish it as quickly as possible. Chulso stopped him. He said that goblins can't just take hits either. He stated that it was Shin who gave the order to kill harmless goblins who were just sitting and doing nothing. Chulso stated that everything happened only because no one bothered to simply talk to the goblins. Shin replied that talking to goblins was a waste of time, as they had nothing in their heads but greed. Chulso shouted that he didn't understand anything and that goblins were no different from people. Shin replied that they were pretending. Goblins are born in the abyss without children or family, and all their words are aimed at deceiving adventurers. Shin continued that he does not want to destroy their species, as they also have a right to exist. But when there are too many of them, they begin to threaten the world. Chulso said, how can he say that? Did he think about who would have to die and if he just tried their cooking? Shin replied that their food was poisoned. Chulso remembered that in the Goblin village he had indeed been treated to poisonous soup. Oh also thought that some of the events in the village were quite strange. This is a game, and monsters in it just appear. They are not born. Chulso thought that these bastards had deceived him. Shin said that after listening to him, he should understand everything himself. At this time, Heaviman decided that something strange was happening and it was time to run. But at that moment, Chulso jumped on her shoulders again. He summoned a goblin using the rally skill. Holding it up in front of him, he shouted at the goblins to listen to him. He shouted to them that the Messiah was speaking to them, and he called for an immediate end to the fighting. He admonished them to stop fighting. But the goblins didn't stop. He could no longer control them like before. Then one of the adventurers asked him what he was doing with the goblin. Chulso tried to explain that it was a misunderstanding, but he unexpectedly lost his balance and fell, dropping the goblin's head on the ground. The adventurer said that he almost mistook him for an accomplice of the goblins who had caused this disturbance and left. The goblin was furious at being dropped. Chulso tried to explain that it happened by accident, but the goblin lifted a huge stone and launched it into Chulso. Chulso reacted in a goblin-like manner. He grabbed Heaviman by the hand, and he covered himself with it from the stone. He tried to console Heaviman by saying that he would not forget her sacrifice. Chulso shouted at the goblin. How dare he attack him when he was just a summoned servant? At the same time, he thought that it was unlikely to work. Then a voice was heard which said that he still had a lot to learn. It was the summoner Irene. She watched what was happening with surprise. Irene recognized the goblin with the floppy ears and the strange guy she had met in the city. Suddenly, she recognized the object that Chulso held behind his back as the red whip. Is this idiot really going to use the damn red whip without even lifting the curse? Chulso swung the whip, thinking that it was not for nothing that Catherine had given it to him. He struck the goblin with his whip, and Irene tried to stop him. Standing on a mountain of goblin corpses, the new Fire Guildmaster said that there was so much scum here that their deaths tasted sweet. His deputy, Professor Gemin, replied that now was not the time to have fun, as their strength was already running out. The head of the new Flame Guild, Asfas, stated that if such worthless people defeated them, then they were even worse than them. Guildmaster Armstrong Horace Philibert also continued to fight the goblins. He said he got his 100th headshot and stopped shooting. The Vice Guild leader said that he shouldn't deceive himself. She explained that 100 shots were fired, but only 99 goblins were killed. Horace asked her if she was sure she could count well. At that moment, a goblin rushed at her, but a bullet flew from above and hit him right in the head. Guildmaster Armstrong said that this fountain of blood is in her honor. The new Fire Guildmaster asked why everyone only killed 1 or 2 goblins with one blow. We must fight the flock in a different way. With these words, he used a powerful fire skill. However, for some reason, the goblins were in no hurry to flee. Professor Gemin stated that the goblins were acting strangely. A strange goblin walked slowly through the crowd of his fellows. He looked quite sinister. Jamin shouted to his boss that something strange was happening and he should be careful. But the new Fire Guild leader had already activated the Flame Knight's Meteor Burst skill. He shouted loudly that anyone who stood in his way would be destroyed. But then someone's figure emerged from the sea of fire. Asfas was surprised. He said that this is a really incredible guy. A little earlier, the summoner Irene tried to stop Chulso, who tried to use the damn whip. But she didn't have time. The cursed whip has already touched the goblin. There was a powerful explosion. Irene angrily asked Chulso how he could do such a thing. But he froze and told Irene that he could not move and asked her to release him. Chulso fell into some kind of abnormal faint. The goblin appeared to be unharmed by the explosion, but his appearance has changed a lot. Irene remembered that madness significantly increases ability stats, but makes it impossible to control the summoned creature. However, she decided that she could handle him, but the goblin was too fast. He was not an ordinary weak summoned creature. Irene continued to fight the goblin, but to no avail. She remembered that the most terrible thing about madness is that the summoned creature does not even recognize its owner. And indeed, the goblin rushed at Chulso. Michelle came to Tom's aid. She grabbed it and threw it aside. Irene used the Bluebird summon skill and summoned another creature, Romeo. This distracted the goblin. Irene decided that there were no more obstacles to attacking the goblin, and so she ordered Michelle to attack him. Michelle obediently rushed into the attack, but the little goblin easily threw the huge Michelle aside. Irene couldn't believe her eyes. The goblin landed on the ground, and then he rushed at Irene. She miraculously managed to dodge his attack. Irene used her summoner skill, Summon Gigas. A huge earth elemental, Gigas, appeared and blocked the goblin's path. However, this did not bother the goblin. He swung and struck the giant. The earth elemental Gygas trembled and shattered into small pieces. Irene thought that she had not made a mistake in calculating the damage and that it was necessary to immediately cancel the call so that no one would be hurt. She ordered Romeo to fly away. The goblin watched as Romeo, Irene, and Chulso walked away. This drove him into a frenzy. The goblin grabbed the stones, and he launched them towards the fugitives. Irene and Romeo, who was holding Chulso in his claws, tried to fly away. Seeing the danger, Irene ordered Romeo to fly faster. Romeo increased his speed, trying to get out of the dangerous place as quickly as possible. The stones thrown by the goblin missed. However, the goblin was not going to let them go so easily. He threw up a stone and hit it with his club. The stone rushed towards Romeo at great speed. The rock managed to easily hit Romeo, and Irene and Chulso were thrown off it. Chulso was still in an abnormal faint and was simply falling down. Irene remembered expressing her hope that he wouldn't be so boring the next time they met. She managed to grab Chulso's hand. She tried to soften the fall a little. However, the impact with the ground was very strong. The battle between the goblin and the adventurers continued. Now he was fighting with the head of the new fire guild, Asfas. This time, he activated the Eternal Flame skill. Professor Jemin shouted to his guildmaster that the mob had been hit by a fire meteor but had survived. Jemin continued to say that this goblin was probably very different from the enemies they had encountered before, so he needed to use his main skill. Asfas replied that he would lose the moment he accepted help from others, so let him just watch as he had done so far. Jemin thought with irritation that he, being a gifted man with an IQ of 160, did nothing but watch, since Asfar did not let him take a step. Asfas, meanwhile, finally landed his most powerful attack on the goblin, but the goblin struck back. Moreover, this blow caused maximum damage. The adventurers watched the fight in amazement. Horace Philibert asked Charlotte if she could see it, as he could not believe his eyes. Jemin was alarmed, because if he received damage that greatly exceeded his health points, the player would not be able to withstand the pain signals. He screamed loudly, thinking that the guildmaster was in great danger. Then someone's hand fell on Jemin's head and Asfas said that he had lost. Jemin turned to the guildmaster and asked how he managed to survive. He replied that he himself had spoken about strategy, and he asked what strategy would help defeat a monster that deals maximum damage with one blow. Jemin thought, this strategy must involve escape, if it is impossible to win, but it is still possible to hit once. Asfas finished for him that he would then kill him for this one blow and rushed towards the goblin. Jemin yelled at him to wait for his signal and under no circumstances attack him first. The monster didn't take any damage from the guildmaster's first attack, and it dealt maximum damage in one hit. It is so unusual that it is difficult to even assess its level. New Fire Guildmaster's buff, Eternal Flame, allows him to deal damage to an enemy while ignoring their defense, so there's still a chance to defeat the goblin. The goblin grinned insolently as he saw the attacking guildmaster. Attacking such a monster is utter idiocy, but Asfas will not retreat until he pays him back for everything. Jamin used his professor skill at this time. He was throwing around some strange things. There were already quite a lot of them. These things were needed by Jemin to set up the field. He was about to use the Operation Stop skill, which stops the movement of all enemies within its range for 8 seconds. Jamin signaled to the guildmaster and activated the skill. The goblin froze a few meters away from Asfas. The guildmaster thought he was about to be killed and acknowledged the goblin's incredible strength. He first used the Last Breath skill, which leaves 1 HP when receiving fatal damage, and then the Berserker skill, where the lower your health level, the higher the damage dealt. The frozen goblin took quite a significant amount of damage from Asfas's blow, but immediately after that he began to move. Jamin was amazed. The goblin managed to free himself in less than 2 seconds. The goblin continued his attacks. Jamin prepared to use the skill Reorganization. This skill moves all players within the radius of action, but it requires preparation for 1 minute. Jamin stated that the level difference was too great, and even if they continued fighting, it would be useless. He added that there are really idiots who would risk their lives for some game. Many in the crowd agreed with him. The goblin had taken 300,000 points of damage, but was completely fine. Most of the players decided to log out. They can deal with him next time. Horace Philibert suggested that Charlotte should also run away. She agreed, and said that she would have left the game even without his offer. But as she disappeared, she saw that Horace himself remained in the game. She told him as a farewell that she would return in 10 minutes. It was not possible to re-enter the game earlier than 10 minutes later. Asfas boasted to Jemin about the damage he had done to the monster. He responded by asking why he hadn't come out yet. The goblin's movements could only be stopped once, and the reorganization skill could only be used once per minute. Suddenly, the guildmaster saw a stone flying at him. The goblin used his rock throw skill and it was impossible to dodge. But then the sound of a shot was heard. Horace Philibert intervened in the fight. The bullet he fired hit a rock a few centimeters in front of Asphas. He thought that he himself didn't even have time to react. Horace Philibert said that he was lucky. The stone seemed dangerous to him and so he shot. He added that he was sorry if he had deprived Asphas of his prey. The head of Galidia New Fire told him to stay out of his way. Horace replied that there was no point in delaying then. Both guildmasters rushed at the goblin at the same time. Horace Philibert unleashed a hail of bullets on him. But he was disappointed with the result, because the goblin didn't take any damage from his shots. Taking advantage of the goblin's distraction, Asphas struck him from behind. This attack dealt over 400,000 damage to the goblin. Jamin watched the battle that was still going on with surprise. O thought about why they hadn't given up yet. Because in this battle, the probability of dying was much higher than winning. The goblin's emotions from the battle were transmitted to Chulso. He finally woke up. Chulso thought about what had actually happened. He felt something soft and elastic under his hands, and I thought about how nice it was to press it. Then Irene's voice was heard, who said that Skim Chulsos, unfortunately, had woken up. Chulso asked Irene if she was the one riding the huge cat then. In turn, Irene asked whether that little goblin would be with him then and demanded that his summoning be immediately cancelled. Chulso asked in bewilderment why he should do this. Irene said irritably that he didn't even realize what he had done. He hadn't even removed the blood cord curse when he hit the goblin with it. She continued to talk about how while he was here unconscious, the goblin had gone crazy and was destroying everything in his path. He at least understands the suffering he has condemned the goblin to, who is now forced to hurt others against his will. Irene demanded that he, for the sake of himself and the other players, recall it immediately. Chulso replied that he couldn't do that. He never had a recall button or function. Irene was surprised. Wasn't he a summoner? Wasn't it possible that a summoned creature couldn't be recalled? But Chulso replied that he himself wanted to get rid of this goblin but didn't know how. Irene asked how he could say such a thing, since the goblin would suffer. In response, Chulso asked why she was meddling in something that wasn't her business. What's wrong with him hurting someone unintentionally? Because all people are divided into those who have already hurt him or are going to do so, and there is nothing wrong if they get hurt. As for the goblin, he won't receive any wounds, neither physical nor mental, so she'd better worry about her own skin. Suddenly, a loud crash of a powerful blow came from the scene of the fight, and Chulso saw his goblin take over 700,000 damage. This is the damage inflicted on him by the attack of the new Fire Guild leader. But the goblin quickly recovered, and then he immediately launched a new attack on the adventurers. Asphas thought that since this was not enough, he should deal the final blow and wanted to use the Eternal Flame skill. However, it turned out that he didn't have enough mana left to activate this skill. Asphas looked at the approaching goblin, unable to do anything. The sword flew out of his hands. The goblin had already touched his face, and then the reorganization activated by Gemin took effect. Asphas was carried from the field by the belt and found himself next to the professor. Gemin was indignant at what he was doing. If he had already started fighting, he should continue until the end and win. Well, or at least not die. Gemin stated that only idiots would risk their lives for some game and suggested that they give up and run away. Asphaf told him to stop yelling. Then he turned to Horace and said that he could stay, but he had to leave. Horace Philibert replied that he was also leaving, since they were more trouble than pleasure. Asphas still didn't understand who he meant. At this time, Chulso screamed loudly, outraged that his goblin had received such enormous damage. He thought that if the goblin died, then it would be the end for him too. To begin with, Chulso decided to summon a goblin here using the rally skill. Irene, hearing about the call, tried to stop Chulso. Due to the madness effect, it can even hurt Chulso, so you need to remove this effect first. The explosion that occurred in the village could have been caused by only one person among the people, the head of the new Fire Guild. If the summoned creature's health drops to 0, the summon is cancelled and the madness effect is also removed. Chulso asked if this meant he had to let the new Fire Guild members kill the goblin and if he could resurrect him later. Irene replied that he would not die. He would simply fall asleep and then wake up, since there was no concept of death for summoned creatures in this game. She clarified that this happens usually, but his case can hardly be considered ordinary. Chulso asked her if she was asking him to trust her and risk his life. He stated that the goblin's life is his life. Since he cannot imagine how he will live without it, he would rather die. Irene was shocked by Chulso's words. Does he really value someone so much that he would shout about it like that? Irene walked up to Chulso and took his hand. Looking into his eyes, She asked him for forgiveness. Irene said that she would never let the baby she cherished so much die and would do everything to save him. Chulso shouted that if there was no other way to save the goblin, he would call him right now. Irene replied that this method appeared after he stopped considering the goblin simply a creature to be summoned. A maddened monster can be compared to an animal that has been abandoned to its fate. And the best way to the heart of such a baby is to give him food. Chulso was puzzled by such words. Irene said she believed it would work, as he had always been sincere with the goblin. Chulso thought that he only used the feed goblin skill once to lure him out of town and never tried to lure him with food. He suddenly realized that he had never fed a goblin since then. Then Chulso used the summoner skill feed the goblin. He thought that this should bring him back to normal. Chulso summoned a sausage and ran to the goblin, begging him to wait for him. Irene asked why he used the summoning skill if he had food. Then a goblin rushed past her and ran after Chulso. Irene was puzzled. Why do goblins follow Chulso? Chulso also noticed that the goblins were running after him, and they look at him strangely, or rather at the sausage in his hand, and at the same time they lick their lips greedily. It was all explained quite simply. He had the special goblin sausage in his hand, a legendary sausage that would bring back even a runaway goblin bride. Chulso shouted at the goblins to get away from him and ran faster. The adventurers were surprised to see the goblins gathered in a large flock. Horace guessed they smelled something tasty, and he added that they would have big problems if they didn't get out of here. Asphos grabbed Gemin by the hand, and he threw it away from the battlefield. The leader of the new fire guild had only 1 health point left. Therefore, he quickly died under the blows of a huge flock of goblins. Having reached the goblin, Chulso stopped. The goblin stood in front of him as if waiting for something. Chulso handed the goblin a sausage and explained to him that it was the legendary goblin sausage. His mouth was practically watering. He slowly approached Chulso, and he carefully sniffed the sausage. He already wanted to swallow her, but a sudden rush of goblins knocked Chulso off his feet, causing him to drop his sausage. Goblin Chulso didn't even have time to react and was swept away by the pack, which is in pursuit of a sausage. I ran straight through Chulso. The damage from the goblin's attacks was small, but there were many attacks. Chulso was furious and thought that Shin was right when he said that there were too many of these creatures. The goblins gathered into a huge mountain. Finally, one of them almost reached the sausage. Suddenly, there was a powerful explosion. The entire sky was filled with flying bodies of goblins. It worked Chulso's light steel armor. Chulso remembered that his armor had a 1% chance to activate heaven and earth destruction when hit. A message appeared before his eyes that he had destroyed a goblin who had trusted him, and for this he received 1 goblin point. Chulso fell from a great height and wondered if he could survive, but everything turned out well. Just before the collision, he was gently caught by the goblin. Having landed, Chulso was glad that the goblin had finally come to his senses. He told the goblin that he was glad he had returned, and added that if he had been hungry, he should have simply said so. Then the legendary sausage fell next to them, and the goblin, throwing Chulso aside, rushed towards it. Chulso saw a message that the task of clearing the goblin village was completed. He received a reward of 350 gold. Summoner Irene, who had arrived just in time, leaned over Chulso. She thought his madness had finally subsided. Irene asked Chulso if he had knocked out all those goblins, and he asked her why she had come. Irene decided to get straight to the point. She asked if he was responsible for the goblin attack. Although goblins are considered weak monsters, there are hundreds or even thousands of them there, so the villagers cannot be allowed to come to harm. Irene said he was wrong to attack people who didn't do anything to him, so you have to do what needs to be done. The adventurers heard an explosion that cleared out the goblin army, and they decided to find out what happened. In the huge hole left at the site of the explosion lay the goblins' lost property, and it was indicated that this was the village support fund and that anyone could take gold from it. Several people gathered in a secluded room to discuss the problems that had arisen in the game Heaven's Gate. One of them said that we should talk about the results of 667. Another responded that 667 had confirmed that maximum damage had been inflicted. Even the most brutal criminals could not achieve such results. The kindness inherent in the human heart. It turns out that it is precisely this kindness that can weaken the summoned creature and make it uncontrollable. 667 doesn't have a human heart. Isn't it a perfect being? Anyway, it's a wonderful result. Many sacrifices had to be made to achieve this result, but after a dozen reboots, a savior finally appeared. The very fact that such a perfect goblin was summoned indicates that 667 is the most goblin-like person of all the previous summoners. If such a person, possessing enormous power, were to use it everywhere, it would turn into a disaster, and this cannot be allowed. In order to maintain control over this person, Iscariot should be used. Chulso was looking through the news about the game Heaven's Gate. They widely covered the goblin attack on Phoenix El Basar, but fortunately, nowhere did they report that he was the main culprit. Chulso thought it was a good idea to leave the goblin's property to the city resident support fund rather than keep it all for himself. This incident took 10 years of his life, and on top of that, some monster led him by the nose. Chulso remembered that this happened because he had not fed the goblin for a long time and thought that he did not know enough about the summoner class. The cat lady Irene could help him figure all this out. She has a high level and owns some kind of huge bird. However, Chulso wondered why such a successful woman began to help him. It looked rather suspicious. First, she called him cute and asked him what the goblin's name was. Chulso muttered that it would be nice to hook up with such a beautiful woman, but he felt someone's gaze. It was Seungryul the Insidious, who appeared as suddenly as always. Chulso asked him what he was doing there and how he found him. Was he really following him? Seungryul replied that he saw concern on his face. Apparently, he came for a reason. Chulso said that Seungryul knew perfectly well why he had that expression on his face, so there was no need to pretend. Seungryul confirmed that he understood his concerns about the goblin. Chulso replied that it was indeed because of the goblin, but here's how he knew about it. Seungryul said that it was obvious that the goblin summons would no longer have the same power, and that was why he was filled with anxiety. Chulso demanded to know what he meant. There are rumors that a critical bug has been discovered in the game for the summoner class, and that work is underway to fix it. Chulso was really worried. Did they really want to fix this bug? Their conversation was interrupted by a message coming from the gates of heaven. It said that a patch with bug fixes would be released in a week. This message left Chulso depressed. Chulso was in the game and thinking about the current situation. He was very worried and irritated. The goblin watched him with a grin. It turns out that all of the goblin's incredible power is explained by a bug in the summoner class, and there is only a week left until this bug is fixed. Chulso decided that during this time he should earn 2 billion. He came back to Shin, who told him not to get too cocky for defeating a few hapless goblins. Chuls declared that enough empty talk was enough and demanded that he be given a new assignment. Shin smiled sadly and said that he needed to reach level 40 to receive a new quest. Unfortunately, after the quest in the Goblin Village, Chulso only managed to reach level 38. He decided that taking on quests was much more effective for leveling up than hunting random monsters. However, all the best tasks have already been taken. Of the high-level quests, the only one left was the demon mask in the cave in the Lost Ruins, which gave 10,000 gold. Chulso reached for the task, but another player did the same. It was Heavening whom he encountered in the Goblin Village. Hwan Nin reacted violently upon recognizing him and loudly called him a crazy pervert. Chulso also recognized her. He remembered that this was the same girl whom he had tied up back then. The nearby adventurers were outraged when they heard Heavening's words, and they surrounded Chulso threateningly. While they were arguing, another adventurer took on the task. It was an elderly woman, Okre, a 32nd level mage. Chulso indignantly asked how she dared to steal his assignment, but the woman calmly replied that he had not noticed the small print. Chulso was surprised to see that the squad to complete the task had to consist of at least 3 people. He looked at the frightened Heavening and declared that she would be useful to him. But he told Okre that she was just an old woman and could hardly be of any use. She calmly replied that nothing could be done if he didn't want her to go with him, but whether he could handle it himself was a question. Chulso stated that there were many adventurers here who would go with him on the mission instead of her. But the adventurers began to make a wary noise. Many recognized him as the bastard who was involved in the story with Han Ki-moon's daughter. Chulso had no choice but to take this granny on a mission. Regarding the last place in the squad, Chulso looked meaningfully at Hwaning. She screamed in fear that she would never agree. But it was already too late. The task was accepted, and the team was formed from the 3 of them. Heavening fought fiercely with the monster, and she thought gloomily about how it happened that she ended up on the same team with this idiot. Chulso hurried her, saying that at this rate they would only be able to complete it by next year. Heavening replied irritably that she couldn't go any faster. She can't kill all these monsters with one blow. Although Chulso was wary of using the bugged monster, he still decided to take the risk, and he summoned a goblin. Heavening broke out in a cold sweat when she saw the goblin who had caused so much trouble last time. The goblin rushed at the mobs with a terrible scream. Ray declared that she could handle these weak mobs and use the mage skill Fireball. But Chulso told her not to get underfoot. The goblin launched a powerful attack, and the strongest of the monsters was defeated with one blow. Heavening screamed that it was that same goblin. She asked Chulso why this goblin was here again. He replied that it was the goblin he could summon, which shocked Heavenin. Chulso said he was the summoner of a cult goblin that could kill with one blow, so they better not get underfoot. After the goblin was summoned, the battlefield was soon cleared. Chulso and his group moved on. As they walked, Hwanin asked Okure how she started playing Heaven's Gate. She replied that it happened because of her husband. Hwanin admired how romantic it was, and she asked to tell her more about her husband and what class he plays in. Grandma started telling how she got involved in this game, but then the goblin interrupted them, making his usual coughing sound. Chulso said that this was the very monster they came here for, the demon mask. The sight of the monster confused and alarmed Hwanin, and she said in surprise that it would just be a mask. Okure assumed a fighting stance and shouted at them not to come close to him. Memories of how she got into this game flashed before her. Her husband was lying in the game login device, and she was asking if it was really that much fun. He replied that he was very bored, and now that he couldn't go outside, he at least had this. While her husband was playing, Grandma fed him apples. She thought it was good that the government had given the old people such equipment so that they could now pass the time. Grandma remembered how surprised her husband was when he first met her in the game. At that time, he was on level 17. That time, she borrowed a car to enter the game from a friend to meet her husband in the game, and was surprised at how beautiful it was there. Her husband then said that she looked like an old woman and had written her name, which was displayed above each player, incorrectly. Then she told him that he had also chosen a scandalous name. Okure stood in front of the monster, above which glowed the strange name Demon Mask level 36 and I Love Paka Cray 0 level 38. The monster looked at her ominously. Heavening shouted at her to be careful as it was too dangerous. The monster raised his sword over Okure. She told Chulso and Heavenin that they would have to help the old people. Granny activated the mage skill, and she directed the dark bomb technique straight at the monster. Even Chulso and the goblin were surprised at how much this granny could actually hit. Okure slipped between them, and Chulso's face was suddenly covered by a demon's mask. The goblin made a questioning sound, and Heavening asked, confused, "What happened? Did Grandma really kill the monster?" Okure, meanwhile, was helping the man in armor who was leaning on her to walk. Above this man glowed the signature I Love Pakokre 0 Warrior, level 39. Hyawan finally realized that Grandma Park's real name was Okure and that the two of them were acquainted. She remembered how she asked them to help the old people, what she meant. The goblin tugged on Heavening's leg, trying to get her attention. She turned around and wanted to ask what happened. Well, then I saw a mask on Chulso's face and a glowing signature above it. Demon Mask level 35. Zakim Chulso's level 38. Unable to contain herself any longer, Heavening screamed out how much she hated this. Strange sounds were coming from the cave in the Lost Mines. Then Heavening appeared from it, running with all her might. She was pursued by Chulso in the demon mask. He almost touched her. Heavening's leg twisted unexpectedly. She bent over and Chulso tripped over her with all his might and fell. When he fell, his mask came off. Seeing that the mask had come off, Heavening thought that it was enough to simply deal damage rather than finish off the character. But after the mask flies off, it begins to pursue the player closest to it. At this point, Heavening realized that she was that player. Chulso had a hard time coming to his senses after his mask came off. He shouted to Hvaning that she also saw what happened to him, so why did she just run away instead of saving him? But then he saw the mask on her face and the swelling muscles. The transformed Hvaning looked like a real giant in comparison to him. Chulso tried to run away, but Hvaning grabbed him and pinned him against the wall. He tried to tell her that they were friends, but received a powerful blow to the body. Chulso activated Rally's goblin summoning skill, and the goblin appeared in front of him and shielded him from the furious Hvanen's attacks. Chulso thought that this mask controlled the players, which is why he couldn't control himself a little earlier. He gave the order to the goblin to attack. He swung his club, and he delivered a powerful blow straight to Hvaning's mask. The mask fell off her face and she woke up. The force of the blow threw her far to the side. Chulso saw the mask flying at him again and covered himself with a goblin. The mask tried to subdue the goblin, but because of his long nose, it could not fit on his face, and that's why it flew away. She tried to attack the goblin again, but again to no avail. The mask began to pursue Chulso again, and he ran away from her with all his might. He had almost caught up with Ok-Ray, who was carrying her husband on her back. Ok-Ray turned around and screamed at him to stay away from her. Here, Chulso noticed the signature glowing above the man that the granny was dragging. I love the pack. He remembered that he had seen the same nickname above the monster wearing the demon mask. Chulso also noticed his grandmother's nickname, and it dawned on him that he shouted that they were brother and sister. Ok-Ray called him an idiot and said they were brother and sister. Chulso replied that it didn't matter. The main thing was that they deceived. Running away from the mask, he promised to take revenge on them when all this was over. Okay, Ray's husband woke up and said he had a severe headache. The mask suddenly changed direction and flew towards Okray. She swayed and dropped her husband. Chulso was taken aback because the mask was aimed specifically at him. Okay, Ray's husband looked at his wife with concern. Horror was reflected on his face. He shouted reproachfully at Chulso that for the young it was nothing, but for the old people it was impossible to even move after this. He became indignant and asked if they were really suggesting that he put on this mask and stated that older people should not play such a game. Heavenin ran up to him with a goblin, and he asked in surprise why she hadn't died from the goblin's blow. She replied that squad members would only take damage if they turned on PK player killer mode. Chulso pointed accusingly at Okray and said that she had originally wanted to take the mask off her husband and put it on them, but now the mask had stuck to her. Heavening suddenly looked at Chulso carefully and asked if he ever wanted to become a goblin. He was indignant. Why would he want to become some kind of goblin? Heavenin explained that she didn't mean the weak goblin, but the one he summoned. Chulso said thoughtfully that lately the goblin had been doing badly for him. He was very strong, but often did as he pleased. Heavening asked him what it looked like when she was wearing the mask. Chulso replied that she looked like a crazy bitch, which made her angry. He added that her muscles had grown, and she said that was what she thought. That by putting on a mask, a person begins to look like what he dreamed of becoming. That grandfather was short in stature and probably had some complexes about it, which is why he looked so huge under the mask. Chulso asked what that grandmother wanted then and looked meaningfully at Hwaning. Okay, Ray's husband stood in front of her and begged her to wait a little. He promised to definitely save her. Looks like that grandma wanted to have a baby. A married couple was experiencing a serious problem. The woman could not get pregnant. Perhaps it's time to finally abandon this idea. The man consoled his wife and told her that she shouldn't frown and cry. There are people who have a hard time getting pregnant, so it's not your fault. We can live together in perfect harmony without a child. The man said that one day he would be her naughty son, and the next, she would be his daughter. He asked if such trifles could really bring her to tears, and he promised that he would take care of her like a baby all his life. All these memories flashed through Ilove Pakokre Zero's head as he looked at his wife. Okay, Ray was wearing a mask and looked pregnant. Watching the old couple, Chulso said that they should leave while they had the chance, as that crazy mask was moving too fast. Heavening stopped him, saying that they couldn't just abandon them. She recalled that when she was under the influence of the mask, it was like paralysis. She could not move or speak of her own free will. Hwaning firmly suggested to Kim Chulseo to save them, but he simply turned around and left. He asked her if she wanted to wear a mask for the old guys when she tried to stop him. Heavening stated that she was not offering to sacrifice herself, but simply wanted to destroy the mask. When Chulso refused again, Heavening said that then she alone would receive the reward for destroying the unique monster. Chulso froze, the thought of the reward for the unique monster awakening his greed. Heavening continued to persuade and stated that this monster was not so difficult to kill. This monster is only level 36, but the amount of rewards for it will surely be on a completely different level. The words about rewards on a completely different level made him start to act. He called the goblin, and with a sly smile, he took out the bloodworm whip. Seeing that even the goblin was frightened by the appearance of this whip, Heavening asked what it was. Chulso told her to sit quietly and explained that this was the only way to destroy the mask. Using bloodworm whip grants the player a random effect and causes the summoned creature to enter a frenzy. Chulso thought that he could always remove the madness effect by using the feed the goblin skill, so he decided to take a risk and whip the goblin with his whip. Heavening shuddered in fear. As a random effect, Chulso received the abnormal status fragility. The damage he takes will be increased. Chulso told the goblin that if he killed the mask, he would receive a delicious legendary sausage. But the goblin reacted rather strangely and rushed at him. Chulso tried to hold him back, but the goblin pounded his head with his fists. Then Chulso used the goblin throw skill and launched it towards Okray. The goblin flew through the air and hit right on the mask on Okray. Her husband cried out in alarm, and he rushed to her aid. Since squad members cannot harm each other, Okray was not harmed. The mask that flew off her flew towards I Love Pakokre Zero. Then Heavening arrived and pushed him aside. She screamed at him to leave quickly with his grandmother, and they would sort everything out themselves. I Love Pakokre Zero grabbed his wife and hurried away from this place. Chulso was delighted with how the mask resisted, which meant it was definitely a unique monster and a large reward awaited him. The goblin at this time targeted Heavening, who was wearing a mask. He rushed at her, but Heavening dodged it easily. She grabbed the goblin by the leg, and she dealt him a powerful blow. Chulso was surprised that she was not only able to dodge the goblin's attack, but was also able to counterattack. The goblin, thrown back by the blow, slowly came to his senses. Taking advantage of the moment, Heavening swung her leg, and she dealt another powerful blow to the goblin. Chulso thought with relief that the goblin could not be damaged by the squad members. The blow was so strong that he was even afraid for him. However, Heavening, wearing a mask, moved so fast that the goblin could not hit her. The power of her attacks also increased incredibly. Having received another blow from her, the goblin flew far away. Chulso thought the goblin looked pretty tough, but this creature wasn't weak either. Meanwhile, the goblin crashed into the rock and it shattered into pieces. Chulso watched in horror as the rock fell on them. He only had time to think that something terrible was happening again before they were showered with shrapnel. OK-Ray and her husband were still trying to leave the place when they saw that the cave was collapsing. OK-Ray screamed that something crazy was happening. Her husband said he remembered that he had promised to take care of her as his baby for the rest of his life. He said how lonely she must have been if she had made it this far before they were buried under the rocks. Chulso lay covered with stones and could not move. He heard Heavening's voice asking where he had gone and blaming him for everything that had happened. She saw his hand and asked if he could move it. Heavening said that there was a mask next to his hand, but she herself was stuck in the rocks and couldn't do anything. Chulso gathered his strength and delivered a weak punch to the mask. However, even a small amount of damage was enough. The mask let out a loud, eerie scream, and it shattered into small pieces. Heavening was surprised that the mask broke from such light damage. Its level increased from 36 to 39. Chulso's level increased from 38th to 41st. Chulso wondered where the promised reward was, and then saw that a mask had appeared with an inscription that it was a unique item and could not be sold. O decided that he needed to quickly take it before someone got there first, but then he heard some approaching sound. It was an enraged goblin. Chulso remembered that he was still under the effect of madness and activated the skill feed the goblin. A goblin's face with a mad look appeared in front of him. His finger reached towards Chulso's face, and it hit me right in the eye. Chulso screamed desperately. Heavening asked what was going on after hearing his scream. Suddenly, Chulso received a powerful blow and flew past her. The impact was so strong that his body cut a long passage through the rubble. OK-Ray and her husband were glad that Heaven had mercy on them and they were able to survive. Heavening watched what was happening with surprise. She saw the goblin who had come to his senses and the mask lying nearby and thought that it was time to get out of here. Chulso was very annoyed and asked Huwaning how she dared to take the mask for herself. She replied that she didn't know that unique items couldn't be exchanged and simply took it to give it to him later. Chulso shouted in anger that he would definitely set the goblin on her as soon as he woke up from the madness. Seeing Chulso upset, Yalovepa Kokre Zero took out a wallet with money and said that this was all they had. Chulso blinked in confusion. OK-Ray's husband asked for forgiveness and thanked him for saving them. He also demanded that his wife apologize too. Chulso was outraged that they wanted to atone for their deception with money, but asked how many of them there were. Heavening asked indignantly if he really wanted to take their money, since that was all they had. OK-Ray's husband reassured her that they had both decided to stop playing the game. He said that he should quit the game where he could die, and added that he would now spend more time with his wife. Chulso said that since the old people have stopped playing, the game currency is useless to them unless they exchange it for real money. The old men asked Heavening if game gold could really be exchanged for money, and the three of them began to whisper about something. Heavening said that gold and various items could be exchanged for money at the bank, but it was best to exit the game now. Chulso shouted indignantly, asking what they were whispering about. But Heavening and the old men had already left the game. He was furious about the loss of a unique item and money. Chulso appeared before Shin again, who was surprised that he had already reached level 40. He brazenly declared that although Chulso had become stronger, he still had a long way to go to catch up with him. Shin said that he could now reveal one secret to him and suggested they go for a walk. Chulso indignantly shouted at him not to run away from him, but to simply give him the task. Ignoring Chulso's cries, Shin began to tell him about the great 1,000-year war between humans and monsters. This battle ended in victory for the people, and the monsters were banished to the dungeons. Peace reigned, but it did not last long as people began to fight among themselves. Chulso replied that he had nothing to do with it. Shin continued that people needed someone to direct their hatred towards, and he decided that monsters were necessary. With these words, the NPC showed Chulso a huge monster sitting behind bars. He was surprised that there was such a strong goblin in the city. Shin explained that throughout history, The forces of humanity have only united when a common enemy, a monster, has appeared. He also said that war was coming soon and that he had to make a difficult choice to prevent it. Even if many people die, this is necessary to prevent even greater casualties. Chulso asked why he had taken on such a burden and what was so important about it. Shin stated that he was going to stage a battle between humans and monsters again. Chulso replied that he didn't care. The path would simply give him a task and that's it. Shin said it would be a difficult journey and invited Chulso to join him. Chulso realized that in order to receive the task, he had to agree. But what would happen if he refused? So he pressed the refuse button. Shin told him to think again and that he needed him. But Chulso pressed deny again. Shin kept telling him to think again. Chulso realized that this was done to force the player to agree, but he continued to refuse. Finally, Shin couldn't take it anymore and pulled out his sword. He stated that there was no choice and he would force him to join, even if he had to use force. Chulso yelled that he was just joking, and of course he would join him. But it was too late. Shin struck him with his sword with all his might. Chulso was surprised that he didn't feel any pain, even though he was hit by a level 70 character. It was probably done in such a way that after defeat he would have no choice but to join Shin. He told the goblin to kill him, they just needed to pretend to fight, but the goblin had already used the stone throw skill. Chulso shouted that he had asked them not to kill him. Standing over the fallen Shin, Chulso asked if he was okay. Shin lay with a huge wound in his chest. Finally, he came to and weakly told Chulso that he had become much stronger and was able to deliver an extremely outstanding blow. Looking at the defeated Shin, Chulso thought with horror that now he would not be able to receive the task. Chulso gave the command to his goblin to rush at the scorpion boar, which was numerous in the desert near the ruins. But the monster had already been attacked by another player. That player turned out to be Magjon, a level 41 wizard, who sternly told Chulso to know his place. Then he got furious. They showed him his place again. He won't be able to receive the quest anymore, and a patch will be released soon. And he will no longer be able to use the goblin's power. Meanwhile, Magjon used the lightning skill against the scorpion pig, but he had already been killed by the goblin. Magjon was angry that his loot was taken away from him. And again, Chulso shouted for him to know his place. He was so annoyed by the missed opportunities to get rich that he turned on PK mode without thinking. In just a few days spent in the desert, Chulso increased his level from 41 to 44. He cleared locations, but did not earn 1,000,001. Since killing monsters gave little money, he was never able to change his life. Chulso remembered Sungryul telling him that if he wanted to go to a high-level dungeon, there would be a time for everything, and also that his goblin's power is caused by a critical bug and will be fixed soon. While Chulso was mourning the missed opportunities, someone snuck up behind him. Chulso was surprised that PK mode suddenly turned on, and he passed out, having received a strong blow to the back of the head. When Chulso woke up, he was already in the city. Sungryul sat next to him and said that he was already tired of babysitting him. Chulso asked suspiciously where he had come from again. Sungryul responded, healed him and saved his life, and he was very lucky that he happened to be passing by and saw him pass out. Hearing that he had lost consciousness, Chulso became thoughtful. He remembered how PK mode was activated, and he realized that some bastard had dared to attack him. He declared that he had to repay the debt and called the goblin. Sungryul asked how he was going to find the offender and whether he had managed to make many enemies lately. He noted that it is impossible to steal items or money from another player in the game, so there must be another reason for the attack. Chulso wondered who had a grudge against him. Maybe it was Han Ki-moon. Sungryul replied that such a big shot wouldn't stoop to simple beatings and bullying, so it definitely wasn't him. He also said that if he had no suspects, he should forget about revenge. Chulso was indignant. Why does this kind of crap always happen to him? Sungryul also said that it was better to think about what was in front of his eyes now. Isn't there anything he should do? He reminded that a patch will be released soon. Chulso came to his senses. Soon his goblin would become useless, so it would really be better to postpone revenge for later. Now it's better to take care of earning more money. Chulso asked if Shin had died, and Sungryul replied that nothing could happen to an NPC. He would resurrect in the same place. Chulso was indignant that he had not said this earlier. He asked if he could earn 2,000,001,000 before the patch came out. Sungryul replied that his goblin had great strength, but strength alone was not enough. There are other variables that are necessary to successfully complete the dungeon. Even if a warrior is determined to clear a dungeon in one day, in reality, it may take several days or even a week. Chulso was upset. He could not accept the fact that he would miss the chance that had been given to him. But he said that he didn't care. If he already had a bugged goblin, he would farm with it until the fix. He sobbed and said that he was only able to get here with the help of the goblin, and without him, he was a complete nobody. Suddenly, PK mode activated, and Sungryul gave him a powerful slap. Chulso was indignant. What is he doing? Maybe he is tired of living. Sungryul shouted at him to come to his senses. If he gave up now, what would happen to the Everton Guild? Chulso was surprised. What does the Everton Guild have to do with it? Sungryul explained that the Everton Guild is currently fighting with all its might to prove that they did not enter the hidden dungeon thanks to him. They try to show that they can win without him, and they gain the upper hand time after time. They call a creature that must be watched and constantly contained a rival. And they consider the rival not the goblin, but him, Skim Chulsos. Sungryul asked if after all this he still considered himself a nobody without a goblin. And he gave him another slap. Chulso fell heavily to the ground, but this cleared his mind. He looked at Sungryul and thanked him for his words. He helped him up. Catherine was streaming from the game Heaven's Gate. She told her viewers that today they would complete a mission in the game together. Her main goal will be to not take any damage from any of the monsters, although this is difficult since she is a mage, not an assassin. She was going to fight a monster known for its speed. This mission gives 10,000 points, and therefore it is imperative to complete it. But it turned out that there were no monsters in the desert. She told her viewers that it seemed like a peaceful world. There weren't any monsters here, and it looked like her 10,000 were gone. Someone's voice said that if she was looking for a place to hunt, then she had come to the wrong place. This was the land of death. It was an adventurer with the nickname Sleeping Mage. He was a level 41 mage. He said that there used to be peaceful hunting grounds here and a lot of players would gather there. It was a lot of fun. But one day he appeared here. He suddenly came and destroyed all the monsters here. Catherine suddenly saw a monster appearing above her. She looked at him with fear, but the sleeping mage said that from time to time monsters are reborn, but he immediately kills them. There was a sound of a powerful attack, and the monster was defeated with one blow. The sleeping mage explained that all revived monsters immediately become his victims. He also said that if she is not happy with something, she can complain to him. He does not hide or run away. Catherine looked where the adventurer was pointing and saw a figure that seemed familiar to her. She came closer and recognized the figure as Kim Chulso, but then she noticed a man sneaking up behind him. Before Catherine could do anything, the unknown person hit Chulso on the head with a brick. She wondered why someone attacked Chulso from behind. Catherine thought she had seen this man somewhere before. She strained her memory, trying to remember where she had seen the old bald man. And suddenly I remembered. It was this man who sold them information about the hidden dungeon back then. She found it strange that he attacked Chulso from behind, then grabbed her and dragged her somewhere. Catherine rushed after them, but the old man was fast and was already too far away. Then the call rang out and a man in glasses appeared, who called her mistress, asked what happened and why the stream was interrupted. Catherine calmed him down and said she had a favor to ask. She needed someone to keep an eye on him. She said that she was ready to pay any price. She needed someone who would quickly and accurately complete the assigned work. Sungryul suggested that Chulso save up some money. Chulso hysterically replied that he wanted it himself, but did not know how to save 2 billion. Sungryul swung his arm to slap him again. But this time Chulso was faster. He said that he was wrong to imagine himself strong just because he managed to hit him a couple of times. Sungryul reproachfully said that people should be allowed to finish their conversations and that it would be impossible to earn 2 billion, but 2 million was entirely possible. Chulso said that 2 million would not help him. Sungryul replied that this money would be savings for preparation, since to win the lottery, you need to buy lottery tickets. He added that now he doesn't have time and needs money, so it's time to rely on luck. Chulso stood in front of the central pavilion of the Phoenix El Bazaar, holding a sign in his hands. The sign said that Turbo Gamer would clear any dungeon for 1,000 gold. An adventurer approached him and expressed doubts that he would be able to quickly clear a high-level dungeon. To this, Chulso offered to go with him into the dungeon once and promised to return the money if he failed. An adventurer named Sadsef and his friends asked if he could clear out the Duke's great library. Chulso replied that he didn't know what it was, but he would win without any problem. The team of adventurers greeted his words with wild laughter, and Sadsef said that he, at level 44, wouldn't even be able to enter the dungeon. However, he said that he agreed to use his services, but if the dungeon could not be cleared, he would have to return the money. Chulso agreed and made a deal. The adventurer said that the recommended level for completing the dungeon is 46, but he wants to level up faster. He thought to himself that Chulso, being at level 44, would not be able to complete the dungeon, but they would gain experience and then return the money. However, While he was thinking about how he would become stronger thanks to Chulso, he had already disappeared along with the money. Meanwhile, Chulso was surprised by the idiots who give their money to a person they see for the first time in their life. He thought that Sungryul had come up with a really good idea, collecting money from players to complete dungeons for them. In 2, Chulso collected almost 40,000 gold, and he also received a point from the Goblin Lord, who was delighted with his cheating. A man came out of a building in the city complaining that he had no luck again today. On the street, he collided with Chulso, who was passing by, and became indignant. He shouted that if you bump into someone, you have to apologize. But Chulso passed by silently. The passerby decided that he had completely lost his mind. Meanwhile, Chulso was determined to win at gambling. He came to the Baniro lottery, which was run by the NPC Baniro. He told Chulso that a try at the lottery cost 100 gold pieces, and suggested that he take a look at the items that could be won. The prize for first place was the legendary item, the Lion King's gloves. The prize for second place was the legendary item Shooting Star, boots that had an effect similar to teleportation. Third place received the legendary item Ring of the Guardian God, which gives a steel body. Chulso was fascinated by the prizes and declared that he intended to spend 34,000 gold coins on the attempts. He was sure that he would win. The lottery attendees perked up when they heard how much he was willing to spend. They asked him if he really wanted to bet all his savings at once. Baniro accepted 1,000 gold from him. Chulso watched the movements of his hands with fascination. And now there were 10 attempts at the lottery in front of him. Chulso began to show his cards. Suddenly someone's hand stopped him. Chulso was indignant and asked what was the matter. It was his money. The stranger replied that everyone was watching him and rooting for him, and he couldn't ruin everyone's fun by turning the tables on them. He advised keeping a close eye on Baniro. This is Baniro's favorite pose. He stands like this for a reason, but in order to hide the expression on his face. When you touch the card, he starts twitching. This is because he has seen the cards and already knows that you have won. And the harder he twitches, the higher the winnings. Judging by the way Baniro is shaking, you have a promising card in your hands. Chulso's tension reached its peak when he finally turned over the card. It turned out to be a broken branch, a completely useless card. Chulso asked his interlocutor in disappointment what kind of nonsense he was talking about Baniro's twitching. Those around him shouted encouragingly that this was only the beginning. After all, he'd only spent 1,000 out of the 34. Chulso thought that they were right, because he still had a lot of gold, and continued to open his cards. They all turned out to be useless. Excited, Chulso demanded 10 more cards. The next scenario was no better. However, this did not stop Chulso, and he continued to place bets. More and more. Chulso was enraged by the series of failures. He only had 10,000 left, and he began to suspect that this was all a big scam. His interlocutor said that one should not underestimate superstitions, and if he is unlucky, it is better to have someone else open the card. But Chulso irritably pushed away his hand, which was reaching for the map. Chulso thought that his interlocutor was right about something. Perhaps he really did have an unlucky hand. And so he called the goblin. He asked the goblin to choose a card. He waved his hands wildly over the cards, and accidentally swept one card onto the floor. One of the players pointed to the fallen card, and he said that, judging by the changed expression on Baniro's face, there was something unusual there. Chulso froze, looking at the fallen card. Could this really be his first jackpot? The crowd began to make noise, and Baniro was clearly agitated. And the interlocutor told Chulso that it seemed that luck had smiled on him. He added that it was only the 3rd time he had seen such an expression on Baniro's face. Chulso thought that if he opened the Lion King's gloves, he could sell them and pay off all his debts. He decided that he only needed first place and picked up the card. Someone in the crowd shouted that these were King Khan's gloves. Chulso looked at the card and saw that he had drawn the vanity item of King Khan's glove. The crowd began to talk that he had won an even rarer item than the first place prize. Chulso angrily shouted at them to stop messing with his head. It was just a useless object of vanity. The interlocutor stated that he did not understand anything about this. In one game, there is a bag with no useful effects, but it sells for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Chulso couldn't believe it. What idiot would spend money on an item that doesn't do anything? People spend huge amounts of money on fashion and personal care, and they are ready to spend even more to upgrade their style. Chulso said that he really had hit the jackpot and asked how much this vanity item cost. Baniro replied that he never thought he would be able to win the special prize. The chance of winning, which was equal to the chance of winning first place. He said it was a super rare item that couldn't be guaranteed to be purchased even for 1,000,000 gold because it couldn't be exchanged. Chulso, in desperation, demanded to give him cards for the last 9,000. But it was all in vain. Chulso didn't even manage to take the third-place prize. He decided to sell his armor. Other players tried to stop him, saying that he had received a special prize, and was it worth going that far? But Chulso was adamant and put the armor up for sale. The players said the armor looked pretty expensive and asked how much he wanted for it. Chulso shouted for them to bid themselves. He heard some unknown adventurer offer 1,000,000 in gold. The crowd began to whisper, "Who is this man who can pay 1,000,000? Chulso was confused. He didn't think the armor cost that much. The adventurer was Kim Joo-ho, a level 29 player, and he offered to settle for 1,000,000 since the armor was worthless. Chulso thought about it and decided to agree to the deal. He opened the trading app. Chulso put his armor up for sale. The adventurer offered some item for exchange. Chulso was indignant that this was not money. They were going to deceive him again. Kim Joo-ho answered him that he was apparently not a connoisseur and explained that it was a rare material, the beating heart of a dragon. The crowd whispered that this was rare loot from the red dragon Lormus. Chulso thought, judging by the people's reactions, it really was an expensive item. Kim Joo-ho stated that he was actually losing money on the deal. Chulso decided to agree, but he saw that the deal was cancelled and looked at the adventurer with bewilderment. He apologized, saying that he had pressed the wrong button and offered to try again. Chulso put the armor up for sale again and waited for Kim Joo-ho to put his item up for exchange. As soon as the adventurer's item appeared, Chulso pressed the exchange button. Kim Joo-ho thanked him for the deal and immediately left the game. Chulso was surprised that he left the game so quickly, but decided that it did not concern him. But then he finally took a closer look at the item he had exchanged the armor for. The crowd started shouting that it was a strawberry. It looked like the guy had been seriously scammed. There were a lot of people here who were crazy because they lost money, so it was an ideal place for scammers. To be honest, this armor didn't look like $1,000,000, so he should have been wary right away. The player who first spoke to Chulso here asked him how many people he thought had won the lottery here, and he himself answered that no one won. They were all stuck here and watching others, waiting for their inevitable loss. When everyone thought that Chulso had managed to win something, they were overcome with envy. They wanted you to lose, so they were happy when they found out that your item couldn't be exchanged. The adventurer then advised Chulso to learn a lesson from all this and left the room. The goblin hugged the upset Chulso by the leg. He roared for him to let go, and left the game. Waking up in reality, he screamed that he would kill all those bastards who had deceived him. But then he saw two unpleasant guys who mockingly said that he couldn't kill, otherwise how would he pay them if he was put in jail? Chulso replied that he had paid off all his debts, but one of the unpleasant types said that he had only paid $200,000 and had to give back the rest. The nasty guys dragged Chulso outside and started beating him. Under a hail of blows, Chulso shouted that he would soon pay for everything, but they continued to beat him. One of the guys kicked him hard. Chulso tried to close himself off, but then Sungryul, who appeared out of nowhere, protected him from the blow. The bandits were outraged by his intervention, and they said that they would have to get rid of the old man too. But Sungryul said that they would have to pay for bothering his friend. But one of the bandits struck, and Sungryul flew back. Chulso rushed to him and asked if he was okay. The bandit asked if he had really tried to threaten them with that brick and picked up the object that Sungryul had dropped. And suddenly I saw that it was a thick wad of money. He really came to pay off Chulso's debt. Chulso was surprised and asked why he came and why he was paying off his debts. Sungryul said that they probably didn't expect to get the entire debt, and if they came for interest, then let them take it and leave. They counted the money and agreed. One of the bandits asked Sungryul who he was and added that he had known Chulso for a long time and that he had never had any friends. Sungryul asked if they didn't have enough money and refused to answer. The bandits confirmed that they only wanted money. They finished counting the money and left. Sungryul asked Chulso again that he really did borrow $100,000 from them 10 years ago and now owes $2.3 million. He also asked what the debt of his parents, whom he had never met, meant. Chulso admitted that he had lied then. He did not want people to know that he had turned to loan sharks. Sungryul asked why he didn't ask his parents for help. He replied that he was an orphan and that this weighed on him even more than any debt. Sungryul noticed that he had borrowed more money than he needed to live, and Chulso admitted that he had been gambling. Sungryul said that he now understands why Chulso was so eager to enter high-level dungeons, and he asked what he was going to do next. Chulso replied that he would probably take up some physical work and continue to make ends meet. Sungryul said that he was strong enough and shouldn't give up so easily. Chulso thanked him for saving him and said that he would repay him for it no matter what it cost him. He replied that one shouldn't throw words around so easily, and he offered me a drink. On the day the patch was released, Chulso logged back into the game, thinking he had reached level 44 and was strong enough to give up. In the game, he saw his goblin. He looked the same as before. People around him laughed and pointed at him. Chulso looked at himself and saw that he was practically naked after selling his armor. He put on his old rag armor and was glad that he hadn't sold that either. Since he could no longer rely on the goblin, he decided to gather all his strength. He opened the status window to distribute points among the stats. Chulso decided to pump up his health and add a few points to strength in case he had to engage in close combat. He also wanted to buy a weapon to match the new characteristics, but remembered that he had left all his money in the lottery. Chulso decided to go to the Adventurers Guild. There he saw two players talking, Revenant level 47 and Roy level 48. The Revenant looked strange, with a huge ball instead of a head, and was able to reach level 47 using only basic attacks. Roy said that since one person had given them the task, they should find another team member. Hearing this, Chulso offered his help and casually mentioned that he had the Lion King's gloves. Roy was impressed when he heard about the gloves. He stated that Vega weapons were not often seen in action and invited Chulso to join them. To complete the mission, the entire formation arrived at the Red Canyon. Roy said not to be too careful. The monsters here are much lower level than them, and if you don't attack them, they won't attack first. Chulso was cautious because his gloves were actually vanity items with 0 stats. He thought about how he hadn't cleared a dungeon without a goblin since he'd been mining ore in the mine. Roy asked him why he hadn't chosen a specialization yet and explained that only his nickname was displayed above his head, without a class. Chulso realized that the hidden class is not shown to other players. That's why it's hidden. Revenant also had no class listed, reaching level 47 without a specialization. Chulso decided to admit that he actually did have a specialization, but then a spear stuck into the ground in front of him. Chulso was surprised why the monsters attacked them anyway, and then he saw that his goblin was the first to pounce, until another order was given. Minions attack monsters in sight. Chulso summoned a goblin with Rally and told him not to mess around because he was useless after the patch. Roy asked what kind of goblin it was. Chulso admitted that this is his minion. He received a hidden class that allows him to summon one goblin. It used to be very strong, but it turned out to be a bug. Chulso also said that a patch was released today that fixed this bug. Roy asked how he knew about the patch fix. The monsters were already approaching them closer and closer, but Chulso replied that it was from a good friend. Roy pointed out that his friend was mistaken, as the patch notes for today's patch didn't mention anything about the summoner class. The monsters dealt a powerful blow to the goblin, but he did not receive any damage. Chulso thought that someone had deceived him. Sungriel asked for forgiveness and said that he had indeed made a mistake. Chulso replied that it was not at all necessary to ask for forgiveness, because he's going to die anyway. Sungriel yelled that he must have misread the patch title and asked if everything wasn't fine now since the goblin was fine. The goblin continued to hold Sungriel's leg over the abyss. Chulso stated that because of him, he had lost so much time that throwing him out of here 100 times would not be enough. However, he ordered the goblin to lift Sungriel up anyway. Chulso said he understood that he did not mean to harm him, and since his friend asks him to forgive him, he has no choice but to do so. Sungriel asked if he really considered him his friend since he was just spending time with him, and he enjoyed watching himself make a fool of himself. Sungriel, dressed in an expensive suit, drank coffee in his office. He looked out the window at Kim Chul-so walking below. Sungriel decided that the guy now completely trusted him, and it was time to start implementing his plans. He uses his goblin powers for Heaven's Gate. As Kim Chul-seo was crossing the road below, he was suddenly hit by a car. Sungriel screamed in rage. All his plans were going down the drain. Sungriel sat next to Chulso, who was lying on the bed, and asked the doctor if everything would be okay with him. The doctor replied that he was very lucky. He was hit by a car, but he escaped with a few scratches. Of course, he injured his head, but the X-ray did not reveal any problems, and he will be able to leave here immediately after he wakes up. Sungriel blamed himself for not keeping an eye on Chulso. He might be strong in the game, but offline, he was an ordinary person. Chulso stirred and asked where he was. Seeing that he had woken up, Sungriel rushed towards him. Chulso looked at Sungriel and asked who he was. Sungriel was stunned. It seemed he had lost his memory. After entering the game, Chulso asked Sungriel if it was true that they were actually close friends. Pointing at the goblin, he asked if this cute little monster was his minion. Sungriel was horrified. Chulso not only lost his memory, but his personality also completely changed. At this time, Chulso asked the goblin if he liked being scratched. The goblin seemed to be very unhappy with the changes that had happened to Chulso. While walking down the street, he bumped into some man. He asked where he was going and called him a bastard. To this, Chulso apologized with a sweet smile and asked if he had accidentally hurt him. Sungryul thought gloomily that not only had his character changed, but it had gotten much worse. He had become a good person. Sungryul decided to test Chulso's abilities on the Speed Scorpion and asked him to order the goblin to attack him. He was afraid to send the goblin to fight the huge monster, but Sungryul said that he had defeated stronger enemies before. Chulso gathered his courage and asked the goblin to attack the monster, please. The goblin reluctantly approached and dealt a weak blow to the monster. Sungryul was unpleasantly surprised. After all, Kim Chulseo had previously been the most powerful goblin summoner. He was the savior who was supposed to fulfill Iscariot's dream. The monster struck back at the goblin, but Chulso covered it with his body, taking the monster's blow on himself. Chulso leaned over the goblin 6, asked if he was okay, and apologized for making him fight the monster. The goblin vomited. At this time, Sungryul used the warrior skill's strong swing and killed the monster. Chulso was surprised that this old man was able to kill him with one blow. Sungryul explained that the speedwalkers have a strong attack and are fast, but due to their poor defense, they are easy to kill if you know where to hit. Therefore, this place is often used for leveling, but sometimes disputes arise between players. Chulso said that this was bad, and it would be great if everyone became friends. A voice nearby said that of all the people, he was the one who could defeat any monster in this area. It was the Sleeping Mage, a level 41 mage. Chulso suddenly grabbed his head and shouted that he had seen him somewhere before. A memory flashed through his mind, and he asked the adventurer if he was a high dwarf. Sungryul remembered that the high dwarf was one of the idiots he sold the information about the hidden dungeon to. He thought that Chulso still had some memories left and that returning his memory would be easier than he thought. If you throw Chulso into a hidden dungeon and recreate the moment when his life was in danger, he will remember everything, even if he doesn't want to. Sungryul suddenly said that he had urgent business. He said goodbye, turned around and started to leave. But Chulso caught up with him, grabbed his hand and offered to go together. Sungryul replied that he was very busy and that it did not concern him. Chulso continued to insist. He said that Sungryul was frowning, which meant it was bothering him. Chulso also said that he saved his life, so now he must repay him for it. Sungryul lost his temper and yelled at him to stop talking nonsense and let him go. This did not stop Chulso, and he continued to assure him that, although he did not know what he was like before losing his memory, he was sure that he would have definitely helped him. Sungryul continued to fight him off to no avail, while the sleeping mage watched them in bewilderment. Sungryul urgently needed to contact Iscariot to obtain information about the hidden dungeons. This is the only way he can help restore Chulso's memory before it's too late. Here the sleeping mage interrupted them and said that some man had come to them. Sungryul froze when he heard a familiar voice. It was Yunhyuk of Darkness, a level 51 shadow hunter, who asked Sungryul why he hadn't responded to his messages. Yunhyuk also said that he was at an incredibly low level for someone who was so busy playing that he couldn't reply to messages. Sungryul noticed that he had already become a shadow hunter, which meant he had already mastered the second specialization. Apparently, the hidden dungeon had an effect. Yunhyuk replied that now was not the time to remember that and celebrate their meeting. He said that Patton the Annihilator and Ji-hyun the Deathbringer are in danger now. Chulso suddenly said that these names seemed familiar to him. He assessed Yunhyuk's figure and thought that he looked quite strong and that he had no chance against him. Sungryul was surprised. Patton and Ji-hyun are capable of breaking through anything, unless of course they ended up in a hidden dungeon. Yunhyuk replied that he didn't know all the details. He was only able to receive 3 messages about what was happening. First, you need to gather the entire Everton Guild, including the guild leader. Second, there are level 100 monsters in the dungeon, so you need to be very careful. Sungryul asked what was in the last message. Yunhyuk said that in it they asked to take this idiot with them. He nodded at Chulso. Ji-hyun said that this is the most important thing. Sungryul thought that she had made the right decision. She had seen Chulso's full strength and knew what he was capable of. Although Yunhyuk spoke rudely, he had high hopes for Chulso. He understood that it was thanks to him that they were able to level up so much. Chulso was surprised that they needed him, because he understood that he was completely useless. Patton the Annihilator, level 49, and Ji-hyun the Death Harbinger, level 51 magic archer, were hiding in a hidden dungeon. A level 100 animated cursed armor monster passed by them. Ji-hyun sighed in relief when he didn't notice them and moved on. Patton the Annihilator asked Ji-hyun if she really believed they could get out of here alive. He suggested that instead of waiting, they try to fight this creature. Maybe then at least one of them could survive. Ji-hyun replied that then one of them would definitely die. She added that it was too late to give up. If she waited, help would definitely come. Looking at the current Chulso, Yoon-hyuk doubted whether he was the same idiot. Sungryul whispered to Chulso that they used to be friends and that he shouldn't act so distant. He was surprised that he was friends with such a scary person. Sungryul continued to insist and suggested that they talk to him and act like friends usually do. Chulso walked up to Yoon-hyuk and called him an asshole. He sighed with relief. Finally, he began to look like himself. Suddenly, Yoon-hyuk saw the goblin and tensed up. Sungryul was alarmed. He couldn't let him find out about Chulso's connection with the goblin. Yoon-hyuk from darkness menacingly asked Sungryul if this was the same goblin. He replied that of course not. Compared to what was before, this one looks too weak. He can't think that they lost to such an idiot back then. Yoon-hyuk from darkness thanked everyone for coming. Suji Strongman and Minson Fastwalker asked if the guild leader would be arriving this time. Yoon-hyuk replied that he had contacted him, but that he shouldn't be relied on. They had to figure it out themselves. Ji-hyun, the Harbinger of Death, and Patton the Annihilator were trapped at the exit of the dungeon and got stuck there. They can't get out because a level 100 monster is blocking their way. This mission will be incredibly dangerous, and someone could die. Yoon-hyuk added that although it is a game, the situation is completely different now, so if anyone wants to leave, they should leave now. Suji Silak said that he would definitely help his friends. Assassins Minsu and Hyunsu said that it was enough to simply ask them for help, and everyone else also agreed. Sungryul said that no matter how strong they all were, it was useless to fight a level 100 enemy. Therefore, the main goal is not to fight, but to save the guild members. The main task will be to distract the monster. He thought to himself that if a level 100 monster chased Chulso, he would probably regain his memory. But then Chulso suddenly asked why he had to go there. Sungryul looked at him in surprise. He was so kind. Could it be that his memory was starting to return to him? Chulso stated that he had no reason to risk his life for their guild, even if there was someone there waiting for his help. He said that if they thought these were reasons enough for him to throw himself into the clutches of death, then he, Kim Chulso, agrees, let's get started. Sungryul was confused by his words, and the goblin continued to frown. Darkness Yoon-hyuk thanked everyone for their support and for not giving up, and he led the Everton Guild behind him. The man in the expensive suit asked his interlocutor whether what he had said was true. It was a man wearing glasses, and he instructed his interlocutor to continue observation. He thought that Kim Chulso was acting rather strangely, but he is always like this, so there is no point in reporting this incident to Miss. Yoon-hyuk of Darkness slew the monster with one blow. He said that these pathetic monsters continued to attack them. Chulso watched the Everton Guild fight. Yoon-hyuk and one fought well. The rest, although they fought recklessly, did not miss a single blow. They were fixated on the attacks, knowing that their comrades would cover them. Chulso wondered if there was someone who would definitely cover my back in a dangerous situation. He felt some movement behind him. Sungryul the Cunning swung his hammer, and with one blow he killed the monster. Sungryul said that apparently their defense is weak enough to maintain balance with their numbers, so they are easy to kill. Chulso ran up to Sungryul and hugged him, but he desperately struggled and demanded to be let go. Chulso said that he couldn't believe that the two of them valued him so much. It was probably because he was an honest man. Sungryul confirmed this hesitantly, but thought to himself that he needed to quickly throw Chulso at the feet of the powerful monster. Sungryul the Insidious addressed Yoon-hyuk from the darkness, and he suggested splitting up. Sungryul said that the monsters here are very weak, so there is no point in sticking together. It would be better to split up and start looking for a trap. Yoon-hyuk agreed with him and said that they couldn't afford to waste time. Oh suggested splitting into 3 groups and going in search of Ji-hyun and Patton. The sleeping mage observed the actions of the Everton Guild and decided that he didn't even need to try hard. Some monster with burning eyes rushed at him. The sleeping mage thought that if he showed what he was capable of, everyone would simply relax at the sight of his stunning power. He released a stream of fiery energy and destroyed the monster running towards him. The stream of energy flew further and hit some crystal on the wall. The crystal began to glow, and then it emitted a rather powerful beam of light. Yoon-hyuk from Darkness saw the beam and asked what it was. Crystals on other walls also began to glow. The rays they emitted formed a hexagram, in the center of which stood Yoon-hyuk with the fighters. Sungryul said that this was probably a trap that Patton and Ji-hyun fell into. Chulso and the goblin watched what was happening in surprise. Suddenly, the floor beneath them collapsed and they fell down. The sleeping mage, who was standing to the side, saw a hole in the center of the hall where Yoon-hyuk and the others had previously stood. Since he was the one who accidentally activated the trap, he thought he was finished. Suddenly, someone from behind said that she seemed to be late. A rather strange-looking girl said that dear Yoon-hyuk seemed to be in trouble. She stated that there was a level 100 monster down there. The girl muttered what to do now and started whining. It was Lammy, Trickster level 87, head of the Everton Guild. The most difficult location in the game is the Count's Great Library, the final dungeon, and even the strongest players are hesitant to venture into it. Only the King of Knights Ki-moon, Empress Lammy, and Berserker Crazy Dog were able to return from it alive. But no one knew that all their comrades in the raid had died. Yoon-hyuk was annoyed that the trap had been activated. Down below, they encountered a level 100 cursed living armor. Yoon-hyuk realized that they had been warned about this monster and that it was impossible to stand against it. They needed to get everyone out of here immediately. He saw a warrior cut in half. It was Minsun Skorakod. The monster loomed over Yoon-hyuk and was already swinging his arm to strike. Suji's strongman rushed to his aid. He grappled with the monster and shouted at Yoon-hyuk to stop it and for him to take the others away. But Yoon-hyuk couldn't leave his comrade and wanted to come to his aid. Then Seungryul appeared, grabbed him by the hand and dragged him along. Yoon-hyuk resisted and shouted that he had to save Suji. Seungryul replied that he could no longer be saved. At this moment, the cursed living armor cut Suji in half. Seungryul continued to pull him along and said that he couldn't do anything to this brute. Minsu and Hensu were killed by the monster before they could even blink, leaving them with no choice but to run. The damned living armor continued to rage behind. Seungryul didn't expect such a massacre. He was just planning to sneak past and save Patton and Ji-hyun. Not only did Chulso lose his memory, but with the help of his goblin, everything would have turned out differently. And so they fell right into the clutches of this monster. Seungryul knew their chances of success were close to zero, but losing their entire squad in 20 seconds was too much. Suddenly, a goblin ran past Seungryul and Yoon-hyuk and rushed at the monster. He used the Tsar Bomb skill. There was a powerful explosion, in which the monster and the goblin disappeared. Seungryul couldn't believe his eyes. Then Chulso ran up to them and shouted that they needed to run away quickly while he couldn't see them. Seungryul was surprised that Chulso managed to survive the massacre. He decided to take advantage of the opportunity and shouted at Yoon-hyuk that they needed to run away. Yoon-hyuk hesitated for a moment, but he still decided to follow Seungryul. When the smoke and dust from the explosion cleared, the cursed living armor appeared. The monster looked around and found no one. Everyone had already run away. He howled terribly with rage and disappointment. Chulso spent his stale goblin points to acquire the Tsar Bomba skill. With this skill, the goblin receives a bomb and explodes along with it. He dies and cannot be summoned earlier than after 10 minutes. Chulso didn't want to use this skill, but there was no way out. If he hesitated, they would all die. He decided it was better to use this skill than to lose his comrades. Yoon-hyuk muttered that it was all over. His comrades were dead. Patton and Jae-hyun were probably dead too. He continued to lament that he was a murderer and had ruined the lives of his comrades, and he shouted that it would have been better if the monster had killed him. Yoon-hyuk's squad was like family to him. They were the backbone of the Everton Guild, and they all died before his eyes. Seungryul thought that he had to help him somehow. He approached Yoon-hyuk and said that there was no time to grieve. The monster could return at any moment and that he couldn't stay here. Yoon-hyuk responded by asking if he knew why the guild captain was acting like that. He said that one day she told him that everyone who was with her on that raid died. At first, he didn't even believe her, since dying in real life because of dying in a game sounds implausible. Before, no one could see the fear in his eyes, because he thought it was just a game. The pain and emotions in it were just stupidity. He never really thought about all this. Everything changed after that ill-fated boss raid, in which he felt fear for the first time. Then the pain stopped being just a fun feeling. It turns out that even if you encounter monsters lower than that boss, you can die in reality. That's why, after that raid, he began to level up tirelessly to close the gap between the monsters and him. But the higher his level became, the more he gave in to despair, realizing that he was burying himself in an endless cycle. If they had managed to save Ji-hyun and Patton, he would have quit the game. If he was so afraid of dying in it, it would be better not to play at all. Yoon-hyuk continued to lament that he was pretending to be an indestructible strongman, but he was scared to the point of shaking in his knees. He was afraid to go alone, so he called the others, knowing that death awaited them, and these idiots followed him. Seungryul shouted that he couldn't have known that things would turn out like this. They had a very good plan. He tried to calm Yoon-hyuk down, but he kept saying that he was the one who killed everyone. Seungryul swung his arm to bring Yoon-hyuk back to his senses with a slap, but Chulso got ahead of him and delivered a powerful kick to Yoon-hyuk. Seungryul was surprised by his decisive actions. Chulso told Yoon-hyuk that he was a grown man, but he was acting like a disgrace, and asked how he knew that they actually died in real life. Sungryul decided that Chulso might have regained his memory. Chulso also said that it was probably in vain that he considered such a pathetic weakling a bosom friend. Sungryul thought, when was it that they were friends? It seems like his memory still hasn't returned. He remembered that after the raid, Yoon-hyuk asked Chulso where he was going, and he replied that they should stay away from freaks like them. They almost became sworn enemies. Chulso continued to attack Yoon-hyuk, saying that no one had ever died from games and that you shouldn't believe everything without seeing it with your own eyes. He also said that he would still have time to cry when they got out of here. But now people needed his help. Chulso demanded that he quickly get off his ass and deal with everything else later. Sungryul watched what was happening in surprise. He didn't think Chulso had changed so much. Yoon-hyuk asked Sungryul what he thought about death in real life. He knew that this was not a fiction and that there were probably already people who had died in real life while playing Heaven's Gate. But he said he had only heard some rumors about it, so it was not worth writing everyone off just yet. Yoon-hyuk thought about his words. He then apologized to Chulso for his inappropriate behavior and thanked her for her wise words. He also said that he was indebted to him again and intended to pay this debt alive. Sungryul was surprised that Chulso managed to get Yoon-hyuk back on his feet, but he couldn't tell if he had regained his memory or not. Yoon-hyuk gave the command to move out. They are going to save the Everton Guild. Meanwhile, Sleeping Mage asked Lammy if she was going to save those trapped, since she was the Guildmaster of Everton. But she replied that she came to watch Yoon-hyuk get his ass kicked, not to help anyone. The Sleeping Magician was annoyed. She came to see the death of her people and their exit from the game. Maybe she is sick. Lammy replied that there are no normal people in this game. She also added that they were all naive kids. This was a dungeon and you couldn't leave the game in it. The Sleeping Magician was stunned. If this is true, then it turns out that this is a trap. Ji-hyun Deathbringer and Patton Annihilator were still trapped. Patton tried to contact someone outside, but to no avail. Ji-hyun asked if he remembered how they got trapped. The spell was reflected in the crystal on the wall, and they ended up in a magic circle. Patton exploded and told her not to remind him that it was so stupid that he was usually the one accused of it. But this time, it was her fault. Ji-hyun agreed and explained that traps usually worked on slow-witted people like him. But she is different, and she was always careful. Patton asked indignantly why she was bragging about this. Ji-hyun said that usually the traps were quite simple and designed for simpletons like him. But the trap they fell into was only activated when a spell hit it. Ji-hyun asked why someone would set up traps that even a thick-headed idiot like him wouldn't fall into. She continued by stating that the dungeon was designed for level 50 players. But then why did a level 100 monster appear in it? Patton asked what difference it made. They were trapped anyway, and it looked like they would die here. Ji-hyun screamed that this was no ordinary trap. Suddenly, she stared at something behind Patton. She saw some strange crystals sticking out of the wall behind Patton. Ji-hyun remembered that the crystal that had trapped them looked exactly like this. She suddenly took out her bow and pulled the string. Ji-hyun took aim at the crystal just behind Patton, horrifying him. He screamed wildly as the arrow hit the bowstring. The arrow flew between Patton's legs, and it hit right on the crystal sticking out of the wall. Just like last time, the crystal emitted a beam that activated other crystals. They stood in the center of the hexagram formed by the rays. Ji-hyun shouted joyfully that everything worked, and they would be able to get back to where they came from. But she was taken aback by the message that appeared. The Altar of Light mission opened, but it required a team of 3 people. Ji-hyun thought that they somehow needed to find someone else. Patton was in despair. There were only 2 of them left. All the others were dead, and it was unknown when help would arrive. Suddenly, someone's footsteps were heard. Ji-hyun got into a fighting stance and drew her bow. A familiar face appeared from the darkness. Ji-hyun was delighted to see that it was Hyun-soo the Bloodthirsty. Patton shouted joyfully that he knew they would come. However, it wasn't Hyun-soo. From the darkness appeared the figure of the cursed living armor, holding his head in his hand. Ji-hyun froze at what she saw. The monster released his hand and Hyun-soo's head fell at his feet. Patton rushed to help and shouted at Ji-hyun to run, but she couldn't move. Suddenly, a figure flashed by and blocked the monster's attack aimed at Ji-hyun. It was Yoon-hyuk from the darkness who appeared. He said that Chulso's suggestion to use a summoned monster to repel the attack was a great idea. Patton yelled that Yoon-hyuk had finally come to save them. Ji-hyun was amazed at how he was able to deflect a blow from a level 100 monster. A voice came from behind, asking if they were okay. Sungryul, who ran up to them with Chulso, said that they apparently didn't arrive too late. Ji-hyun was surprised to see Sungryul with Chulso. Chulso approached and greeted her formally. He said that they seemed to be friends, and asked if everything was okay with her. Ji-hyun asked Sungryul what was wrong with Chulso, but he shook his head sadly and said that it was driving him crazy. Patton, Ji-hyun, and Sungryul gathered in the center of the hexagram. Sungryul has a message about the Altar of Light mission. The hexagram suddenly activated. Ji-hyun shouted that the exit had opened as a group of 3 people had gathered. She asked if there was anyone else there, but he replied that for now, they were the only ones here. Ji-hyun said that those 2 wouldn't be able to get out alone, and she extended her hand to Chulso and Yoon-hyuk. Chulso calmly watched as they were transferred. Ji-hyun gave her final shout to Yoon-hyuk to save him. Chulso made a calming gesture with his hand as he said goodbye. Ji-hyun disappeared into the transfer portal. Yoon-hyuk was relieved to hear that Ji-hyun, Patton, and Sungryul had made it out safely. And he added that they have no other choice but to defeat this creature. Chulso agreed with him with a silly smile. The cursed level 100 animated armor was approaching them. Chulso calmly watched her, flexing his muscles. He mockingly told the monster that he was still too loud, even though he was about to die. Yoon-hyuk urged him to be more serious and stop chatting. The 2 of them stood against the advancing cursed living armor. Yoon-hyuk prepared to attack and told Chulso to hold on. He used the rally skill, which summoned a goblin to fight for its master. Yoon-hyuk rushed towards the monster. While attacking, he shouted that he would definitely survive. When they ran to help Ji-hyun and Patton, Chulso asked Sungryul if he thought it was strange that they weren't warned about the pumped-up monsters. He looked at him suspiciously and asked if he remembered his past troubles. Chulso replied that he didn't remember much, but it seemed like a window had popped up saying that his level was too low for this dungeon. Sungryul asked what kind of monster he encountered then and what level it was. Chulso replied that he didn't remember, but this time such a window should have appeared too, since the difference in levels was too great. Perhaps this monster's actual level is not 100 at all. All the other mobs in this dungeon were level 50 at most, so there shouldn't have been any level 70 mobs here. Chulso stated that if his guess was correct, then death in reality did not threaten either them or their comrades, so there was no reason to fear the monster. Yoon-hyuk replied that there was logic in his words, but the risk was still huge. He asked if he was willing to take such a risk. Chulso replied that he didn't know and asked him in return what he thought. Yoon-hyuk said that the Chulso he knows would risk everything. Yoon-hyuk attacked the cursed living armor, but the monster struck back, which he barely managed to dodge. Yoon-hyuk said that just the sight of that creature gave him goosebumps. He used the Shadow Guillotine class skill against the monster. The attack hit the cursed animated armor, but to Yoon-hyuk's disappointment, the monster didn't take any damage. He remained unharmed, and he launched a counterattack on Yoon-hyuk. He tried to dodge, but he received a powerful blow from the monster. Yoon-hyuk yelled at Chulso, asking why the hell he was just watching. At this time, he activated the Rocket Earth Goblin class skill and threw the goblin at the monster. He said that the moment with the bomb gave him an idea, and now he can summon the goblin as much as he wants, even if he dies. Chulso shouted to the goblin that he believed in him and that he would definitely survive. He used the Welcome class skill and the goblin was back at his side. Chulso shouted at Yoon-hyuk to show his true strength and assure him that he would cover him. He thought it was easier said than done. After all, it was not Chulso who fought the monster, but he, and at the same time, he did not cause any damage to the monster at all. Yoon-hyuk decided that he had hoped for nothing. This creature was definitely level 100 and thought that he had to run. Yoon-hyuk stood in front of the closed door and asked her if she was afraid of dying in real life. He can't pretend he doesn't understand anything, even if her friends died because of this game. He's not sure she's doing the right thing. Yoon-hyuk shouted that she was still breathing and that staying locked up wouldn't change anything. Stop running away. You need to face the problem head-on, otherwise nothing will change. Yoon-hyuk thought ironically that after such high-flown words, he was now running as fast as he could from the monster. Chulso shouted at him to stop, but he looked at the approaching monster, and he ran along with Yoon-hyuk. Chulso shouted at Yoon-hyuk why he was running away since he promised to cover for him. He replied that their plan was complete suicide. No matter how much he hit the monster, it was all useless. The cursed animated armor caught up with the fugitives. The monster swung to hit them. Chulso used the welcome skill again, and he covered himself with a goblin from the blow. The goblin received the main crown, but they also flew off from the blow and hit the wall. It was a dead end. They were trapped. The monster was approaching them and they had nowhere else to run. Chulso thought that he should summon the dead goblin again and use him as cover, but he was surprised to see that the goblin was still alive. The monster swung his sword again, and he dealt a powerful blow to the fugitives. The blow hit the goblin directly, but caused relatively little damage. Chulso grinned. It turns out he is a weakling, incapable of harming even a worthless goblin. Oh said he was no longer afraid of the monster. Yoonhyuk thought that the monster was so weak, but why then couldn't he deal any damage to it? He decided that he was running then, and therefore did not hit him with all his strength, and that is why nothing worked. He finally made up his mind and gripped his blade. Yoonhyuk said that he was only surpassed because he was scared of some skinny guy. He told Chulso not to bother the monster anymore. This would be his fight. Yoonhyuk shouted that he would cut off his head with one blow, and he boldly rushed at the monster. He decided that if this sword couldn't kill even a goblin, then repelling his attack would be as easy as pie. But the monster's blow was very strong. He couldn't understand why this was so, because he couldn't even seriously damage the goblin, but he continued to fight. Chulso asked if he was still alive and said that he would help now. Yoonhyuk replied that it was not necessary. He thought that it was not the monster that was strong, it was his own cowardly heart that made him weaker than the goblin. He shouted that even if the monster was 100th or 1,000th level, he would still cut him in half. All locked doors must be opened by him. This is his path. Yoonhyuk continued to attack the monster. He shouted that despite the fact that they lived in such a cruel world, he did not believe her and treated her like a fool. He was the real coward, because he didn't take her fear seriously. Therefore, it is he who must open this door and apologize to her. Chulso watched the fight with surprise. He suddenly saw that the level of the cursed animated armor had dropped and became 81st. The level continued to decline and was already 73rd. Yoonhyuk let out a wild battle cry and continued his attack. The damned living armor took a step back. The monster's level has already dropped to 67. Cursed animated armor's level is 61. The cursed animated armor's level is 53. The monster dropped the sword, and he took off running with a wild cry. Yoonhyuk shouted that he had been chasing them so hard and was now running away and rushed after him. Chulso supported him with a shout and asked him to give the monster a good beating. Yoonhyuk from darkness was chasing the monster. He used the black attack class skill and dealt him a powerful blow. Yoonhyuk stood over the defeated monster and grinned. His level increased from 56 to 59. Chulso's level increased from 45 to 50. Chulso shouted that they won and jumped on Yoonhyuk. He yelled in displeasure at him to get off him. The monster dropped good loot. The legendary items Cursed Heavy Armor and Cursed Heavy Sword. Chulso admired the beauty of the dropped objects. Yoonhyuk stated that this victory was not his merit and that Chulso could take it for himself. He said that without him, they would most likely all have been killed. So this is a well-deserved reward for Chulso's efforts. However, to Yoonhyuk's surprise, he flatly refused to take everything for himself. Chulso declared that he couldn't have managed without him either, and that he had certainly earned half the money and would hand him the Cursed Heavy Armor. Yoonhyuk took the armor but said he didn't expect this from him. He added that he now understood why Ji-hyun wanted to work with him. Yoonhyuk asked if he remembered how he called him a worthless, empty-headed bastard, and also a pathetic idiot and subhuman. He said that now he could forget about it and that he was a good guy. The passage in front of them opened again, and they headed for the exit. Suddenly, Yoonhyuk asked that it was not a level 100 monster after all. Chulso replied that he had seen everything with his own eyes. When they began to fight back, the monster's level began to fall lower and lower. Most likely, it wasn't that huge at the very beginning. It just fed on their fears and immediately weakened when they fought back. Perhaps the powerful monster didn't even attack his friends. It could have just been a trap to scare them. So they are probably still alive. Chulso suggested that they leave here quickly and said that everyone was probably already tired of waiting for them. They stepped into the magic circle and flew down. Yoonhyuk thought he saw a familiar figure at the exit, but she quickly disappeared. Yoonhyuk wasn't mistaken. It was Lammy, the guildmaster of the Everton. She muttered why he never gave in and left. Their fall finally ended and they emerged from the portal. Ji-hyun ran towards them as fast as she could. She hugged them all warmly and said she was glad they were all okay. Chulso was a little embarrassed. He told her to keep her distance and that they were not in that kind of relationship. Ji-hyun thanked him for protecting Yoonhyuk. Yoonhyuk was stunned and couldn't believe his eyes. All his friends were safe and sound. Ji-hyun tried to explain the situation to him. When they were thrown out of the dungeon, she was also stunned, and I couldn't believe my eyes. When they came out of the portal, they immediately met Hyunsu and the others. Hyunsu said that as soon as the monster hit them, they were immediately thrown here. Chulso said that if players are immediately thrown out of the dungeon and they don't have time to die, then all those bodies were just an illusion. Hyunsu said that Ji-hyun said she saw him get his head cut off. It's just creepy. The squad members also reported that they wanted to warn them, but were unable to contact them. Yoonhyuk said he was glad to see everyone safe and sound. He asked if the guild captain was here. Seungryul was surprised to hear about the guild captain. Hyunsu replied that she never showed up, They were almost killed here, and she didn't seem to care about them. Chulso said he didn't know if it was the captain, but he saw some girl with the nickname Lammy at the exit, which left the guild members amazed. Yoonhyuk thought that it meant he wasn't imagining things. She actually managed to get out of the room and came to their aid. Later, Chulso asked Surnrayulya if the total hermit, who was deathly afraid to enter the game, had come to save them. He replied that he was not sure that she had come for this very reason, since she had never made any sign of herself. He said that every person has his own secrets and asked Chulso if his memory had returned. Chulso replied that he didn't remember anything. He said that since no one came to visit him when he was in the hospital, he probably had no relatives and was an orphan. He added that at least he has it. Sungryul replied that he really had decided to register him as his father. Chulso stated that he didn't need this memory. It was for the best that he didn't remember anything. He probably didn't have any good memories. Sungryul said that there were probably some important memories, so he simply had to help him get them back. Chulso thanked him for these words. They agreed to meet tomorrow and said goodbye on the street. Sungryul began to leave, but then he turned around and asked if he remembered where he lived. Chulso only smiled stupidly in response. Sungryul invited him to come with him. They entered the entrance of a multi-story residential building, and they began to climb the stairs. Chulso suddenly smelled a familiar scent, and then saw two suspicious-looking people on the stairs. One of them looked closely at Sungryul, but they passed by without saying anything. On one of the doors they passed was a sign announcing that cash loans were available to anyone who wanted one. Sungryul led him into a large room that looked a little empty. He explained that he had intended to rent out the room, but there were no takers, so he lived there himself to prevent homeless people from moving in. Sungryul took out his wallet and put the money from it on the nightstand. He said that Chulso could stay there until his memory returned and recommended going to the bathhouse next door. Chulso tried to refuse the money and said that he could do without a shower. Sungryul replied that it was unlikely and added that he was not giving the money as a gift. He would return it with interest someday. He said goodbye and left, leaving Chulso alone. Left alone, Chulso thought about why he had said that he didn't need memories. As a result, he lives in someone else's house because he doesn't know the way to his own, if he has one. As he fell asleep, he thought that in order to repay his friends for their kindness and not harm anyone, he needed to quickly regain his memory. Suddenly he heard some noise. Someone was knocking loudly at the door. The knocking on the door grew louder. Chulso wondered what it could be, but then the knocking stopped. He thought something terrible was going on. It's as if the debt collectors have arrived again. Chulso saw two vaguely familiar faces in front of him, who asked if he was sleeping and demanded money. Then the face of one of them leaned over him and repeated that he should return the money. Chulso screamed in horror, and I woke up. It was already morning. Remembering the dream, he thought that the guy had a familiar face. Yoonhyuk said that he previously thought it was a rumor, but now there is no doubt that you can actually die in real life in this game. He said this in front of the members of the Everton Guild. He continued that more and more difficult dungeons and monsters follow, with higher rewards, but with them also increases the risk. Yoonhyuk stated that this is why he is quitting the game, and whether any of them will follow his example is up to them to decide for themselves. He added that if something happened to them, he would reproach himself for it for the rest of his days. Minsun replied that he had always contributed more to the cause than anyone else, had protected them from the giant, but that it was not worth taking on such a burden. Suji Strongman said that he deserved a rest and he would go with him. According to many fighters, playing has become completely boring lately due to monsters crawling out of every crack. Hyunsu stated that he doesn't care at all whether he dies or not, and that he plays exclusively for them. Only Patton the Annihilator said that he would never quit playing, since for him it was the only way to avoid dying of boredom. Yoonhyuk asked Ji-hyun what she thought about it. She replied that she was also giving up this business, but first she needs to meet someone. Yoonhyuk told her to convey his greetings and gratitude. Ji-hyun promised to pass it on. Minsun Skorakad offered everyone a drink, but Yoonhyuk said that he wanted to discuss everything with the guild captain. Minsun asked if he really thought she wanted to save them. He himself doubted it. Yoonhyuk replied that there is no loneliness in the world more oppressive than when no one believes you. Therefore, there is no need to think badly about her. He personally has no doubts about her. Yoonhyuk was about to leave, but then a stranger appeared and asked if they were Kim Chulso's friends. Yoonhyuk responded by asking who he was and why they should answer him. The stranger replied that he was just an acquaintance of his. He counted them all and asked if he thought Chulso would be indifferent if 5 of his friends kicked the bucket. Yoonhyuk, taking a fighting stance, said that he had shown up without an invitation and was talking nonsense, and asked him to identify himself. The stranger replied that he was their death. Chulso had a joyful and enthusiastic look. They came to the beach with Sungryul. Sungryul grumbled that there was no need to shout, as if he was seeing the beach for the first time in his life. But Chulso replied that why not rejoice? They were at sea, after all. The old man continued to grumble that he had to spend money on shorts, without which they wouldn't let you in here. Sungryul reminded them that they were at the beach because there was a temple there that allowed players to change classes. Since Kim Chulseo has reached level 50, he can change his class to something more powerful. Sungryul explained that he is currently a warrior class, and if he also reaches level 50, he will be able to become a blacksmith and forge equipment for himself. One could even become a knight. President Han Ki-moon was of that class. Sungryul said that without changing his class, he wouldn't be able to level up any further, so they didn't come here to splash around. Chulso was saddened that they didn't come to splash. The temple is located on one of the islands and moves to a new one every day. Sungryul said that previously they had to comb the entire sea to find the temple, but now they can ask vacationers. Chulso asked shyly what was needed and approached women with questions. But Sungryul told him not to be afraid and sent him ahead. Chulso greeted the pretty girl politely and said that she looked great. She replied that she was not interested in him and walked away proudly. It was not possible to question her further. Chulso's other attempts to talk to women also ended in complete failure, which made him slightly angry. Sungryul, who was watching him, decided that he had finally gotten angry. But Chulso shouted cheerfully that he would try again. Sungryul realized with disappointment that this was the limit of his anger. The guy was truly devastated. Chulso saw a girl with a stunning figure on the shore, and he resolutely walked towards her. He convinced himself that he wasn't trying to hit on her. He just needed to know where the temple was. Chulso greeted them and immediately declared that he was not at all an oddball and that he did not like them at all. But then his foot tripped in the sand, and he fell right on the girl, knocking her down. Chulso leaned on the girl and looked at her in confusion. The girl said she knew she would find him here. She explained that she just wanted to say goodbye to him. Ji-hyun, and it was she, thought that he would confess in the most idiotic way. But she was okay with it. But then Chulso declared that he would sleep in the same bed with her, and that even in this position there was not a spark of feelings between them. Ji-hyun activated PK mode, and Chulso received a powerful blow between the legs. He grabbed the bruised area and whined, asking why he was hurt like that. Sungryul approached and asked Ji-hyun what she was doing there. She said that Chulso was here to change classes and she wanted him to come with her. Sungryul agreed, but asked why she wanted to go with him alone. Ji-hyun pointed out his small level and stated that he had no business there anyway. Chulso muttered that regarding the little ones, he had one here. Ji-hyun told Chulso that he could rely on her and advised the old man to go level up. Sungryul thought that with such a difference in levels, it would really be difficult to keep track of him. He decided that Chulso was in good hands. The trio didn't notice that one person was watching them closely. It was the sleeping mage, who is now at level 44. Once upon a time, Catherine asked someone to find her a private detective. She told him not to spare money, since she had plenty of it, but she needed a real professional. A voice nearby said that it sounded like work for him. He said that she had a familiar face and added that her name was Catherine and she was Chairman Han Ki-moon's daughter. He added that his name was Sleeping Mage and that he had even donated to her once. The Sleeping Mage stated that she needed him to carry out various delicate tasks. He convinced Catherine to hire him, saying that he had a lot of free time and was very quick to carry out such assignments. To complete the task, the Sleeping Mage joined the rescue mission of the Everton Guild. He activated a trap in which the guild squad disappeared, and he thought that it was the end for him, and he didn't know what to say to the customer. That's when that strange girl appeared. She told him to hit the crystals with magic again, and she explained that without the proper charge of magic, this mechanism cannot be activated. And since they don't have a single magician in their squad, it turns out that he has condemned everyone to death. She added that everyone who ended up there would return, even if their brains turned to mush and they were unlikely to thank him for it. The sleeping magician then fled in horror. Upon meeting these three, Sleeping Mage thought that it was good that there were no other guild members nearby. Then he saw that the old man had left, and Chulso and Ji-hyun remained on the shore. The sleeping magician thought that they had finally separated, which meant his time had come. The lady couldn't find the class change temple and now she's restless. We need to help her urgently. Chulso and Ji-hyun were sailing to the island on a raft, which was piloted by a duo of cool guys who looked a little weird. Ji-hyun thought they were kind of helping, but for some reason it felt disgusting, like they were getting into her panties. Chulso, on the contrary, considered them saviors and thought that they were very cool. One of the duet asked the other if he had ever crossed paths with the guy next to the girl who wanted to polish the bread slicer. He replied that he would never have remembered such a monster. The raft was approaching the island. The tough guy duo was in despair. There was no temple on this island either. Ji-hyun reassured Chulso, saying that this was only the second island and it was too early to give up. Then one of the cool guys got a call from his mom who said it was time to eat. The tough guy duo quickly got ready and sailed away, leaving them alone on the island. Ji-hyun was indignant and called them idiots, but Chulso said that nothing could be done. Their mother called them. Chulso said that they would sail to the other islands themselves and find the temple in no time. He and the goblin rushed to the sea, but Ji-hyun screamed for them to stop. She explained that the temperature can be felt in the game, and it's already getting dark, which means the water will soon become icy. Ji-hyun thought gloomily that she couldn't sail away anyway and would have to spend the night on the island with this pervert. She thought that she needed to make a fire to keep warm. Then she saw Chulso with some kind of huge growth between his legs and squealed. She kicked Chulso hard and then added when he said he would answer. Ji-hyun told Chulseo not to stare at her because it irritates her. There was nothing suitable for kindling on the island. Ji-hyun decided to get coconuts to make charcoal. She fired arrows at them from her magic bow. A few coconuts fell near her and she decided that was enough. Then she saw something strange and called Chulso. Ji-hyun realized that it was a huge spider descending from the palm tree and turned green with disgust. She squealed when she saw that it was a coconut spider, a level 42 monster. Ji-hyun called out to Chulso for help, screaming that she was being attacked by a bug. Chulso, who arrived in time and saw the coconut spider, tried to calm her down, saying that it was an ordinary mob. But Ji-hyun continued to scream and asked to remove this abomination. But Chulso continued to fool around and scare her with the spider, which made her hysterical. In the end, Ji-hyun burst into tears. Chulso was surprised. He didn't think that she was really afraid of him. He gave the command to the goblin to kill this pest. Chulso jumped around Ji-hyun and tried to calm her down, saying that he was just trying to play a prank on her. But she continued to cry and said that she hated him. She asked Chulso if he knew why she came here at all. Ji-hyun stated that she was wrong to think that he had changed. In fact, he remained the same empty-headed freak. She said that she had made up all sorts of things, but in the end, she turned out to be a complete fool. Chulso told her that he hadn't really talked to girls before. Therefore, he did not know how to behave and treated her the same way as everyone else. He asked her for forgiveness and said that he did not mean to offend her. Chulso added that they could chat here all night. He was not a very good conversationalist, but he would try not to make a mistake. Ji-hyun said she didn't think he knew how to apologize. Chulso was indignant. He said that not apologizing was the same as acting like a coward. Before he might have run away from such things, but not anymore. Ji-hyun wearily repeated how much she hated him. It finally got dark and the stars appeared in the sky. They decided they had collected enough coconuts and Ji-hyun asked Chulso if he had any fire skills. He got fire, which surprised Ji-hyun, who approvingly said that he had apparently gained experience. Chulso replied that he had learned this only recently. He explained that this skill is called Sarbamba. They laughed together at the funny name of the skill. There was a powerful explosion. They were both thrown far onto the shore. Stretched out on the sand, Chulso gradually came to his senses. Ji-hyun pounced on him, calling him crazy if he decided to use a bomb to start a fire. Chulso replied sheepishly that he had no other fire skills. Suddenly, he noticed something strange in the distance. Ji-hyun followed his gaze. The temple of class change opened before them. Chulso said with surprise that the temple was not located on this island. Ji-hyun reminded that the temple moves to a new island randomly every day. It's midnight now, that's why he was transported here. It seems they were very lucky that of all the islands, the temple was moved here. Chulso thanked Ji-hyun for keeping him company. She looked at him. Their hands touched for a moment, but Ji-hyun quickly pulled her hand back. She asked if he had seen himself in the mirror. Now he looks like a grimy devil and says such things. Chulso was offended, saying that he was born that way, but she explained that she meant soot. He said she looked no better and chased after her to make her even dirtier. Catherine screamed menacingly that she would kill him if she found out that he had lied and kicked him. The man in glasses groaned that he understood her and would never have thought of deceiving her. Catherine asked again if the old man had really let him go and if there were any details. The man in glasses replied that he had found out that Kim Chulso. Catherine exploded again and swung her whip. She declared that she didn't care about Chulso. She was interested in the old man. The butler humbly asked the lady to forgive him and said that he had found him and they could start at any time. He thought to himself that the preparation for the stream had been a bit extreme. There were people who would donate for something like that. Catherine praised him, calling him a good boy, and then she ordered him to leave quickly and bring this grandfather to her. Then the butler, which in general she does well. She's good at humiliating, but she has never learned to praise. He also reminded her that kidnapping is a very serious crime and she needs to be wary of the law. She replied that she was a smart girl. Why should she get her hands dirty when she has a dog to do it for her? Sungryul was talking on the phone with irritation. He shouted into the phone that they really killed everyone to bring G67 to its senses. This is nonsense. Who even thought of such a thing? He asked if they really believed it would work, since he had a great plan. Why do we need to kill them all? The interlocutor called him the third and urged him to come to his senses. Iscariot the first said that if he was so angry, he should think about what would happen to the boy. He added that the guy had lost his memory and had become useless. He didn't kill them right away, but now he had to take matters into his own hands. Otherwise, you'll have to kill G67. No one is irreplaceable, and this guy is no exception. Sungryul said that such a person is not so easy to find, and therefore it is not worth wasting resources. He urged his interlocutor to think about the main goal and give him a little more time. Iscariot the first declared that they had no time. Every second was someone's life. There was no point in wasting it on some idiot. Then he said that he was giving him a week, but if the guy didn't improve, he would have to be disposed of. A secretary entered Iscariot's office and said that the senator had a visitor. At the end of the conversation, he stated that he did not particularly believe in either his plan or his cretin. But if he thinks a couple of corpses will make a difference, he might try. After finishing the conversation, Sungryul thought about Yoon Hyuk. This guy was one of those people who just loves life. Sometimes simple-minded, but he believed that he could do anything. He pretended to be someone incomprehensible, but he always sincerely worried about his friends and was ready to give his life for them without hesitation. All the guys in that guild were like that. They are incredibly naive, but ready to jump into the mouth of a volcano to save a kitten. Sungryul thought that they didn't deserve to die on someone's whim. And Kim Chulso is next in line. He is obliged to help him. Sungryul decided that he needed to immediately log into the game to warn him. But then someone grabbed him from behind and pressed a handkerchief soaked in some kind of nastiness to his face. Consciousness left him. The level 39 Kengakur monster dealt a powerful blow. Chulso commanded the goblin to step aside, but the goblin looked sluggish and inhibited and did not react in any way to the monster's attack. The powerful blow threw the goblin far to the side. Chulso leaned over the fallen goblin and asked how he was. He then used the Blood Ties class skill. This skill allows you to spend some of your health to heal a summoned creature. The goblin recovered and moved towards the monster. But suddenly he fell and foam started coming out of his mouth. It was Kengakur who used the chicken jab skill. Chulso covered the fallen goblin with his body and used the class skill changing of the guard. This was one of the most powerful skills in the skill grid. When this skill is activated, the characteristics of the summoned creature are added to the owner's characteristics. Chulso parried the monster's blow with his sword and was glad that he had been able to sell the legendary helmet profitably and buy a proper weapon with the money. Now he had a rare item, the platinum sword. Chulso managed to wound the monster, and to build on his success, he used the Goblin Leader skill. The skill adds stats to characteristics for each goblin nearby. Chulso thought that he was about to become a real Superman, but then he saw that he had only gained 1%. He stood in front of the monster and frantically thought about what to do next. Kengakur used the skill Two-Legged Takeoff, and he rushed at him. The monster's claws had already touched Chulso's face, but at the last moment, he used the Welcome class skill and hid behind the goblin. The blow threw him and the goblin back. Chulso looked at the goblin with alarm and saw that he was not moving. He thought, "Why did he hide behind a goblin? What kind of person am I?" The goblin rose slowly. He made a threatening sound. Chulso reassured him. He stepped forward and said that it was now his turn to defend. While he was fighting the monster, the goblin stood there with a gloomy look. The fight ended with Chulso winning, who stated that he didn't think killing monsters was so hard. Chulso said that he was still far from catching up with Yoon Hyuk and the others, and it was only after this battle that he realized how cool those guys were. He thought about how Ji-hyun felt now. When they separated, she suggested calling each other sometimes. Oh agreed and stated that they were friends. Ji-hyun said that they should see each other again in the game, and she wished him luck before disappearing. Chulso was then left alone on the shore. He thought that she was probably now resting after having suffered so much from him on the island. Chulso looked at the goblin and saw that he looked very unwell. Suddenly he shuddered and vomited blood. His eyes rolled back. He lay in a pool of blood and weakly moved his hand. Chulso carried the goblin in his arms through the city, and he asked those around him to help him. But these soulless brutes only laughed at him. They said he would have cried over a bag of garbage. He was told that he must have hit his head and that goblins were not held in high esteem here. Chulso asked why they couldn't help since the baby was innocent. Someone's voice nearby said that the scars on the soul take the longest to heal. It was a level 66 combat scholar. He explained that the goblins had recently attacked the city, and so they would not forgive them so easily. Chulso was surprised and asked why they attacked. Here he noticed that only a nickname was visible above Chulso and assumed that he had a hidden class. He replied that he did indeed have a hidden class, but he was no good at goblin summoning since he didn't notice that the kid was sick. He groaned that he had abandoned his son to his fate, and he cried out that it would be better if God took him, because it was because of him that the baby was suffering so much. The combat scientist was a little taken aback and asked if he knew what it was actually painted on. He then added that he knew a lady who could help, but it was hard to get through to her because she was very busy in the dungeons, so you'll have to wait a couple of days. Chulso said that he couldn't wait that long and asked where he could find her. The combat scientist said that he was crazy if he was going to go there. The places there were remote. He should better look into the Goblin Village. Chulso asked where it was. The combat scientist looked at him strangely and said that this was a quest location that everyone had been to, and that he would find a healer for the goblin there. Chulso thanked him and quickly ran away. The combat scientist looked after him thoughtfully and said, "So this is what Kim Chulso is like. He staged a marathon for a handful of pixels. He's an interesting guy, but is he interesting enough to keep an eye on?" He said that so be it. He would do a good deed for old friendship, after which he disappeared. Chulso and the goblin were riding in a cart driven by NPC Matthias. He tried to persuade the goblin to be patient a little longer, and he promised that he would definitely save him. A goblin watched them from behind a tree and muttered that this bastard had really come again. Chulso, holding the goblin in his arms, got off the cart. The driver immediately rushed off into the distance. Chulso felt as if he had been here before. He walked through a passage that also looked familiar. For some reason, a female goblin with a child flashed before my eyes, past whom the attack flew. Looking at the dent in the wall, he thought that this was also his doing. He finally came to the goblin village, which looked empty. Chulso said hello and said that he came on urgent matter and needed help. A goblin appeared in one window, but a moment later disappeared again. Chulso was indignant. They decided to abandon their fellow tribesmen, but who were they after that? Suddenly, the goblins came out and began to advance on him, saying that he had really forgotten what he had sent their brothers to. Chulso tried to calm them down and said that he apologized if he had ever offended them, but he did not remember anything about it. But the goblins shouted that the monster had to be put out and rushed at him. Chulso thought that his case was bad, but then he remembered that the goblin leader skill adds 1% to his stats for each goblin nearby. His current stat bonus reached 13,078%, causing the goblins to stop. Suddenly, someone asked what was going on here. This is the NPC Goblin Chieftain that appeared. Chulso was surprised that they actually had a leader. The chief ordered the goblins to disperse and slowly move towards him. An hour later, he was still walking. Chulso thought that the turtle was moving much faster. The Goblin Chieftain finally came over and examined the Goblin Chulso. He said that the boy was suffering quite a lot, and in such a state, even torture would seem like morning exercises. He ordered Chulso to take the goblin to his bedchamber. One of the goblins was indignant, wondering if the elder had really gone so crazy that he was going to help them. The chief replied that Chulso could kill the entire village, so if they got into trouble, there would be no end to the problems. He also said that he had sworn to protect his people and would do so at any cost. He told Chulso to come over, and he said that the problems with the goblin are solvable. He can be brought back to his senses, but he cannot be cured unless the root of the problem is addressed. Chulso asked, so he determined what the problem was. The chief pointed his stick at Chulso and said that he was the root of the problems. Chulso thought that he was trying to make him dance to his tune. The elder said that goblins are the embodiment of evil. Does he understand how his pink snot affects the goblins? His thoughts are so pure that even when he is silent, he feels like throwing up. Hugging him, yelling that you love him, practically kissing his ass. That's such an abomination for goblins. He won't die, but it would be easier for him to dance on broken glass than to spend even a minute with him. Chulso asked what he should do if a goblin feels bad with a good guy. Should he become an asshole or something? The Goblin Chieftain said that he was a quick thinker, but could he do it? The elder took off his cloak, revealing a powerful body underneath. He told the astonished Chulso that he was going to beat his friend into meat. All that is required of him is simply not to interfere. So let him hold on, he'll have a hard time. So that means we have a week for everything. Roy said that he had never seen a more disgusting creature in his life. Its nature was a source of great disgust to the soul. It looks like he's completely lost his mind. This is the law of life. Constant closeness gives birth to the simplest of illusions. Love. Roy apologized to his interlocutor and said that it seemed he had guests. He cut the connection. Roy said that eavesdropping was not good and suggested that the stranger show himself. The combat scientist admitted that he had eavesdropped and noted that the podcast he had made was pretty crap. Roy demanded that he state his name, to which he was told that the nickname was visible above the head of each player. Roy said he was breaking his heart and asked if he was being cast as a test subject. The combat scientist said that he simply wanted to ask how a stalker would behave if they started to pursue him. Roy smiled back, and he said that even in video games, meddling in other people's business is bad form. Then he demanded to know if the name Kim Chulso was familiar to him. The combat scientist said that it might be familiar, but what does it have to do with him? Roy replied that he wanted to test whether it was possible to restore a person's memory by killing his friend. The elder's hand approached the goblin's face. He held a spoon with food in his hand and gently coaxed him to eat. Chulso shouted indignantly at what he was doing. He himself said that the goblin was sick from tenderness. The elder read the goblin a story about how in a distant kingdom there lived a most beautiful goblin, and he had a terrible, terrifying man. The chief showed the goblin a photograph and said touchingly that this was his dad in his youth. Then he continued reading him the story. It seemed like the goblin was experiencing serious pain from this. Chulso demanded that this abuse be stopped and shouted that the baby was unwell. The elder said that it seemed like he finally understood, but he himself must decide what to do next. But Chulso could not make a decision. The elder prepared to continue reading the story. The goblin's state resembled agony. Chulso ran up to the tied-up goblin, and he dealt him a powerful blow. The elder nodded approvingly. A goblin's hand appeared from under the clouds of dust, and then he crawled out himself. His condition had improved significantly. Chulso, with tears in his eyes, rushed to hug the goblin, but heard the elder coughing behind him. So he turned around in mid-flight and kicked the goblin hard. The elder told him to continue in the same spirit. The recovery process is long, but if you do this more often, the goblin will not get sick. Chulso was happy that he succeeded. The goblin looked at him cheerfully. Suddenly a goblin ran up to them and called the elder, saying that the matter was urgent. The goblins told the chief that there was no point in helping them, since the vomited one had brought trash with him. Chulso tried to assure them that he and the baby had come alone. The elder ordered everyone to follow him and told Chulso that his honesty would now be tested. They arrived at the scene and saw a man lying down. It was Roy Illusionist level 55. He was badly beaten. Chulso looked at him carefully and said that he had never seen that face. The elder said that they would deal with it themselves and told him to get out. The goblins say that he killed an entire army of goblins. Chulso said he knew nothing about it and thanked them for saving the baby. As they parted, the goblin chieftain told Chulso that if he couldn't be a jerk, then he should at least pretend to be one. The goblins dragged the screaming Roy into the cave. Chulso thought maybe he really should pretend to be a bad guy. The goblin nodded at him approvingly. When Sungriel woke up, he found himself tied to a chair. Catherine stood in front of him with her friends. She said that she would like to have a nice chat with him and asked if he liked it rougher. The old man replied that he was glad to see familiar faces. Otherwise, he had been racking his brains trying to figure out who was following him. The sleeping mage said he had his reasons for doing so. Sungriel agreed that everyone had their reasons and suggested getting down to business. Catherine asked if he was being too showy while being held hostage. Sungriel replied that he was going to die soon anyway and that they needed information, and was immediately punched in the face. Catherine said she would let off some steam first, and then they would start talking. Sungriel became indignant and suggested that the accompanying people calm the woman down. The man in glasses said that he still wanted to live and advised him to be patient for a little while, especially since the lady was not very strong in martial arts. Sungriel urged them to come to an amicable agreement and asked where their respect for their elders was. Catherine replied that she didn't know where the respect was. Perhaps it had been dropped on the floor, and she dealt another blow to Sungriel. Catherine was the sole heir to the Semyon group, and she recently revealed that her father was a tyrant and disowned the family. She took charge of her life and began building a career as a streamer, which she was quite successful in. Sungriel thought that all this was good, of course, but what did it have to do with him? And he received another powerful blow to the face. If Chulso had beaten him up, it would have been deserved. But for what reason does he get beaten up by Kimun's daughter? The butler asked where she learned such tricks. Catherine replied that her daddy taught her everything. Sungriel said that he remembered well how he told them about the dungeon in the mines. He then also reported where the door to the dungeon was, and it was blocked by stones. Catherine grinned. Well, yes. Grandpa found the dungeon, chickened out himself, and sold the coordinates to naive youth. Sungryul stated that he knew nothing about Geiger, much less his level. No one had been to this dungeon before them. Catherine asked how he knew about what happened in the dungeon. Who told him about it? He replied that he learned everything from Kim Chulso. Catherine asked how long they had known Chulso. And why does he always follow him around like an abandoned dog? Catherine stated that she almost moved her feet in that dungeon, and she wondered if that was part of the plan too. She said that dying was very, very painful, and she vowed to get back at him in the same coin. Her hands were itching to rip out his spine, but she decided to leave it to Chulso. Catherine said that Chulso would probably be pleased to break the neck of the person who got him into debt. The loan agreement has been concluded. The man who received the money thanked him and began to say goodbye. The man he signed the contract with reminded him that if he ever needed help again, their doors were always open. Sungryul, who was sitting behind the person who handed out the money, also said goodbye to the person leaving. He lent money to those in need at huge interest rates. In moments of despair, people turned to him. Children, adults, even the old people. He had a coin for everyone, and sooner or later, everyone paid their bills. But Sungryul didn't think that Chulso would be one of his clients. Or rather, I just forgot about it. It was about 10 years ago. A strange guy came to him, and he asked how much money he could give him. He seemed like an ordinary beggar, but Sungryul had been in business for years and had a keen eye. Chulso's hands weren't shaking, his eyes weren't darting. He wasn't a gambler, just a hungry kid who wanted a better life. Sungryul asked about his parents, but he replied that he didn't have any. He was an ordinary orphan without a family or tribe. Sungryul wasn't interested in his clients' goals or how they got to that point in their lives. He was young, had arms and legs, and didn't have to worry about getting his money back. For 10 years, Chulso brought him a stable income. Sungryul told Catherine that she kidnapped and beat him. She thinks that after she ran away from her dad, she can do anything. Oh admitted that he drove this idiot into debt. He had nothing. He wandered around the garbage dumps like a homeless rat. He was not able to get out of this shit on his own. If it weren't for him, the guy wouldn't have had a chance. Catherine exploded and screamed that she didn't care. He had ruined the guy's life. She told him to forgive his debt immediately. Otherwise, he would be scattered in pieces in the forest. Sungryul shouted that she didn't understand a thing, that life was much more complicated, and that Chulso could be stabbed at any moment. The sleeping magician expressed surprise at the old man's words. He explained that it wasn't because of him. It was Chulso who had to be locked in the basement to be saved. The guy only had a week left. Catherine was surprised that they really wanted to kill Chulso. She asked the old man for details, but he replied that there was no time to go into details, for which he immediately paid. Sungryul said that she and Chulso are two peas in a pod, and it seems like they haven't been taught any etiquette at all. Then he began to speak and said that it all started with Iscariot. The beautiful girl asked Chulso if he was Kim Chulso. He was surprised that an unfamiliar beautiful girl was addressing him. She said that they went to elementary school together and asked if he was a gamer since he was here. Chulso replied that he was indeed a gamer and asked her if they were really friends. Catherine, and it was she, said that they were best friends forever. Then she apologized and said that they were not the best and not forever. And she asked Chulso to say hello to the audience. He said hello and immediately became the subject of discussion among the stream's viewers. Catherine announced to the chat that today's special was a grind with Chulso. Chulso tried to refuse and said that he had an appointment there, but Catherine insisted. She promised that he would have a great time, and if anything happened, she would write to him in a private message. She added that he wouldn't meet anyone here anyway. When Chulso asked how she could know this, she replied that her female intuition told her so. Chulso gave in. He thought that if they were friends, maybe it would help him regain his memory. They came to the Adventurers Guild. Catherine was greeted with admiring glances and exclamations. Chulso thought she was a real star here. But Chulso was greeted unfriendly and asked how he dared to breathe the same air as their queen. Catherine was offered a promenade in the raid dungeon. She refused, saying that she and her friend were of a low level and they just came in to have fun. But the adventurers said that they would deal with the enemies themselves, and she just needed to be nearby. He stated that their team consisted of 3 of the strongest players in Heaven's Gate. One of the trio, Hen Smith, level 65, stated that he was happy that Catherine came to admire him. The adventurer said that Catherine wouldn't have to fight. It would be enough for her to host the stream and be their commentator. He also promised that they would split all the rewards equally. Catherine thought that money was always a good thing and decided to agree. She called Kim Chulso, but he was a bit busy. Sungryul asked Catherine if she remembered any news headlines about deaths at Heaven's Gate. To her puzzled look, He declared that such was life. The man in glasses said that people know about the possible risks. They are afraid, they gossip, but there are no articles about it. He added that many say that it is impossible to fall into a coma due to injuries in the game. Everyone unanimously decided that this was all a fabrication, but he saw everything with his own eyes. Sungryul said that any journalist would happily jump at the rumors that someone had died in the game, but there was no news about it. He explained that the media sphere is controlled by the state and knows everything that happens at the gates of heaven. Catherine said the whole thing was disgusting. Sungryul revealed that a special group, Iscariot, was created to prevent casualties within the game. From the entire pool of hidden classes, they select the strongest and give them to the chosen ones. People called upon to protect other players. Kim Chulso is one of the chosen ones. They were about to let him go free, but he got into an accident and lost his memory. He's a goblin summoner. All the goblin stats are tied to him, but he's become useless and is going to the trash. Catherine said that it was inhumane. It would be fine to just kick him out, but why kill him? Sleeping Mage said that the hidden class is a unique thing, so there can't be 2 goblin summoners in the game. Since we are talking about human lives, it is easier to get by with a little bloodshed, to take just 1 life instead of 100. Catherine asked if it meant he had decided to send Chulso to slaughter. Sungryul said that it was not for him to say this, but he wanted to save him. Friends in need, they don't abandon. Catherine wasn't very moved by his words. Sungryul also noted that hidden classes are not given out for no reason, meaning Chulso did not receive his by accident. Catherine said that if Chulso got into that dungeon thanks to Iscariot, then Sungryul should know everything about that dungeon. Sungryul thought about it. Then he really was in the dungeon. Seeing that Chulso had turned sour, he decided to save him. Well, then everything went according to plan. If he had stayed at the top, he wouldn't have received the hidden class. Catherine asked why he didn't send Chulso alone, how she and the guys from her squad ended up in this story. She stated that even if he tried to say that any of them could become a goblin summoner, she still wouldn't believe it. Catherine told Sungryul that they were just as much shit as everyone else. They pretend to be the saviors of people, but in reality they sent their entire team to certain death. The devious Seungryul still has the nerve to lie that he wants to save someone. Catherine said that he would be fed on schedule and headed for the exit. As she was leaving, she said that if she had been in Chulso's place, she probably would have jumped under the car herself. Sungryul tried to say something, but Catherine stated that, unlike some people, she doesn't put people into debt. As she left, she advised him to enjoy the show. But then she sarcastically noted that she had completely forgotten that he wouldn't be able to see. The door did not close. Sungryul was left alone. The group of adventurers, which included Catherine and Chulso, were moving through rather ominous terrain. Chulso stated that it was obvious at first glance that there was no place for newcomers here, but Catherine continued to stream carefree. Meanwhile, Chulso began asking other fighters what was going on in the high-level dungeons. The warrior answered him that the monsters were dangerous, and the bosses had been given such patterns that only a normal team could defeat them. They have a healer on their team who heals the wounded. There is a tank that blocks mob attacks. There is also a damage dealer, whose main task is to inflict damage. It's a whole science. In high-level dungeons, this is the only way. Chulso asked what role the Goblin Summoner would be suitable for then. It all depends on the summoner. Some ultra-nerd might clear a solo dungeon and one-shot the boss, but there are no such people here. The warrior told them that they could fight, but no nonsense, so that they wouldn't have to be scraped off the floor later. Healer Girl, Busan Babe. The 63rd level High Priestess said it was time to begin. Hyun the Blacksmith and Muscle Mountain prepared to attack. Suddenly, Catherine and Chulso were stunned to see something strange. It looked like a shooting star. A huge monster landed in front of the fighters. It was a level 65 Ash Lord. Catherine suddenly found herself in a red circle and froze in place in surprise. Chulso grabbed her and pushed her aside. They both fell and Chulso ended up on top. Catherine was outraged. What the hell was he doing? And then a sea of fire exploded next to them. Chulso yelled that they almost turned into French fries. He apologized and said that there was some kind of red circle on the ground. He thought it was a kill zone and decided to pull it out. Catherine realized with amazement that he had saved her, and then she indignantly told him to get off her. A squad of fighters successfully withstood the attack of a monster under the protection of a tank. The mountain of muscles contemptuously told the monster that he was weak and that his attacks were like a pellet to an elephant. The Ash Lord let out a loud roar. Damage dealer Hyun jumped towards the monster and swung his sword. He used the class skill Fierce Poke. The monster easily repelled Hyun's attack, and he struck back, using the Ash Lord's 2 for the price of 1 skill. Hyun took quite a lot of damage. Busan Baby stepped in and activated her full heal skill. The Ash Lord has targeted the Busan Baby girl. The monster stopped attacking Hyun and asked to come to her, and used the Ash Lord's skill. But he was never able to reach the healer. Halfway there, he was frozen in ice. Kim A+, a level 61 sorcerer who protected the healer, stated that focusing the support first is too primitive. Demon Slayer Soul Warrior and Mingyu 49.5 centimeters shooter rushed towards the shackled monster. The Ash Lord asked what the ranger was doing here, and freeing himself from the ice, easily pushed back the attackers. The monster continued its attack on the healer. His punch almost reached the Busan Baby. It seemed that she could no longer be saved. Demon Slayer and Mingyu 45.5 centimeters yelled at him to take his hands off the support. Meanwhile, the level 61 Best Armored Guardian used the class skill Battle Cry. The monster reached Little Busan, but then he switched to the Armored Best and chose him as his main target. The little girl from Busan was indignant. He would have pressed the skill even after her death. She sighed with relief. But then something strange happened. The monster again chose her as its main target. She watched the approaching fist in horror. Hyun intervened in the battle again, activating his Kneecraft and giant sword skills and cutting off the monster's head. The defeated Ash Lord prostrated himself before the Busan Baby. She said in surprise that it seemed like the battle cry had no effect on him. Hyun was also confused, but they decided not to worry about it for now. Catherine was streaming the fight and the chat was in awe of the performances of the three top fighters. Chulso said that they are real legends. They beat the monster with one hand. The experienced warrior cooled their ardor a little. He said that it was a simple mob, and the main boss was still far away. Chulso followed the team of fighters with enthusiasm. Catherine thought that he would also organize a fan club in their honor and then noticed a lonely goblin. She asked Chulso if he had forgotten his goblin, but he indifferently replied that the boy would figure everything out himself. Catherine was surprised by the sudden change in Chulso's attitude towards the goblin. Hyun introduced himself to the stream's viewers as a magnificent damage dealer. He said he hoped he wasn't being stared at, but the chat was rather cool towards him. Catherine asked him why they had been standing there for half an hour. Hyun replied smugly that he was the team's firepower and only knew how to fight. Other team members explained that it was unclear how to proceed further, as the path across the bridge looked precarious. The plan was developed by Demon Slayer and Kim A+. They were considered the best in the team in this matter. Finally, Kim announced with an A+ that they were finished. He said that the statues located along the bridge clearly had some kind of catch. It's not that simple. The main problem lies in the pressure plates. If you choose the correct trajectory, avoiding potential danger will be as easy as pie. But as soon as someone stumbles, the statues immediately attack. One of the best ways to find a way is through trial and error, but that requires an illusionist. Catherine asked the chat who that was. But due to the lack of an illusionist, it was decided to send tanks ahead, and if they take damage, the healer will heal them. Everyone thought it was a great plan. They will meet the boss very soon.